My mother insisted I leave my 7-year-old son with a babysitter for Thanksgiving because she wanted a strictly child-free, quiet adult dinner. But when I walked through her front door and was nearly trampled by my golden child sister's 3 screaming kids, I didn't just turn around and walk out. I cut off their financial lifelines, blocked their numbers, and let the bank deal with the secret foreclosure they were trying to trick me into paying for. I am a 34-year-old single father to an amazing 7-year-old boy named Leo. For the most part, I have always tried to maintain a decent, functional relationship with my parents, but if you have ever dealt with a family dynamic that features a blatant, undeniable golden child, you already know the kind of uphill battle I have been fighting my entire life. That golden child is my older sister, Chloe. She is 36, married, and has 3 kids of her own. In my parents' eyes, Chloe has never done a single thing wrong. She is the sun, the moon, and the stars, and I am just the guy who happens to orbit their perfect little solar system. The favoritism wasn't subtle growing up, and it certainly didn't get any more subtle when we became adults. When Chloe turned 16, she got a brand new Honda Civic with a giant red bow on it. When I turned 16, my dad handed me a bus schedule and told me that building character meant learning how to navigate public transit. When Chloe got married, my parents happily drained $45,000 from their savings to pay for a lavish country club wedding. When my ex-wife and I got married, we had a courthouse ceremony because my parents told us they were on a strict fixed income and could only afford to buy us a toaster oven. And when my ex-wife walked out on Leo and me 3 years ago, leaving me to navigate single fatherhood completely alone, my mother simply patted my shoulder and told me I needed to man up and figure it out. Yet, when Chloe's husband got a 10% pay cut at his corporate job, my parents secretly paid their mortgage for 8 months so Chloe wouldn't have to sacrifice her weekly spa days. I had learned to swallow my pride and just accept the dynamic. I kept my head down, worked hard at my logistics job, provided a safe, loving home for Leo, and kept my interactions with my family polite but shallow. Or at least, I thought I had found a workable balance. When Thanksgiving rolled around this year, my parents called me up on a Tuesday evening to invite me over for the holiday. But my mother was incredibly, specifically clear about one major condition. "Mark, we are keeping things very small and very quiet this year," my mother said through the phone, her tone dripping with that manufactured sweetness she uses when she's about to say something offensive. "No kids this year. We want a peaceful, adult-only dinner. Just you, us, Chloe and Derek. It's going to be a sophisticated evening." At first, I was immediately bummed out and honestly a little hurt. Thanksgiving is a family holiday, and Leo loves turkey and pie just as much as anyone else. But then, after taking a deep breath and thinking about it, I rationalized the situation. I thought, okay, maybe this will actually be nice. A completely peaceful dinner without the absolute chaos of kids running around screaming. I've been working 60-hour weeks, and I have been looking forward to some actual adult conversation for once. I figured I would just leave Leo with his favorite babysitter, Mrs. Higgins, for a few hours. It would be a very short trip. I'd go over to my parents' house in the suburbs, eat some food, make some polite small talk, and then drive back home before Leo even realized I was gone for too long. I even made absolutely sure to call my mother the night before Thanksgiving to double-check the plans and ensure I wasn't misunderstanding anything. "Just confirming the arrangements for tomorrow, Mom," I said into the receiver. "You are 100% sure it's just going to be the adults, right? Because Mrs. Higgins is charging me $25 an hour on a holiday, and I want to make sure I'm not leaving Leo behind for no reason." "Oh, yes, Mark, absolutely," she assured me quickly. "We want a nice, incredibly quiet Thanksgiving, no kids running around causing noise and breaking things. It's going to be so relaxing." With that explicit confirmation, I thought everything was completely settled. I woke up the next day, made Leo a special holiday pancake breakfast, played some video games with him, and then got dressed in a nice button-down shirt and slacks. When Mrs. Higgins arrived at 3 in the afternoon, I kissed Leo on the forehead, promised to bring him back a massive slice of pumpkin pie, and left the house feeling a strange mix of guilt for leaving him in anticipation for a quiet meal. It was supposed to be a quick, easy, drama-free trip, or so I foolishly thought. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, their house looked exactly like it always did. The front porch was decorated with autumn leaves and pumpkins. When I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, the house smelled absolutely amazing, that rich, heavy holiday warmth of roasting turkey, savory stuffing, and baking cinnamon. I slipped off my coat and figured I would have a couple of hours of genuine peace with them. Maybe I would even get some rare, one-on-one time with my dad to talk about football or work. But the very second I walked past the foyer and approached the living room, something felt immediately, terribly wrong. The first thing I noticed was the sheer, deafening volume of the noise. I was promised a sophisticated, adult-only dinner, but what I heard sounded like a chaotic playground. I wasn't expecting the high-pitched sound of children's laughter, The frantic thud of heavy footsteps pounding across the hardwood floor, and the unmistakable crash of something plastic hitting the drywall. I stood completely frozen in the hallway for a second, blinking in absolute disbelief. Suddenly, a voice shrieked out, "Uncle Mark! Uncle Mark is here!" I looked over into the living room to see Chloe's 3 kids, Mason, Harper, and Finn, running like absolute wild animals in and out of the kitchen. Mason was literally jumping off the armrest of my parents' expensive leather sofa. Harper was chasing Finn with a plastic lightsaber, and they were all making an unbelievable amount of noise. It was the exact definition of the chaotic, headache-inducing racket my parents had explicitly claimed they wanted to avoid. I froze in my tracks. Wait, what the hell is going on? I genuinely thought I was hallucinating for a second. But no, there they were. Chloe's kids, tearing the house apart, while the adults did absolutely nothing to stop them. Confused, deeply hurt, and rapidly becoming furious, I turned around and walked into the kitchen. I looked at my mother, who was standing casually at the stove, slowly stirring a pot of turkey gravy like she didn't have a single care in the entire world. "Mom," I said, my voice tight as I tried desperately to stay calm. "You specifically told me no kids this year. You made me hire a babysitter for Leo." She stopped stirring, turned to me, and offered a tight, patronizing smile that did not match the severity of the situation at all. "Oh, honey, don't make a fuss. We did say no kids, but Chloe's kids are here, and they're different. You know how it is with your son." I could feel my heart racing in my chest. The blood was pounding in my ears. "Different?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly despite my best efforts to keep it level. "What the hell does that even mean? Mom? You literally told me on the phone last night that it was going to be a quiet dinner. You said no kids running around because they're too loud, but this absolute circus in the living room is exactly what you said you didn't want." My mother looked up at me, giving me that exact exasperated, dismissive look she always gives me whenever she doesn't want to have an uncomfortable conversation about her blatant hypocrisy. She sighed heavily. "Well, Mark, let's be honest. Your sister's kids are exceptionally well behaved. They're quieter. Leo is just. He's a lot to handle. We didn't want the disruption." I could feel my face flush hot with pure, unadulterated rage. "They're quieter?" A literal crash echoed from the living room as Mason knocked over a floor lamp, followed by Chloe lazily yelling from the dining table, "Careful, sweetie." This was a straight-up, unapologetic slap in the face. It wasn't just disrespectful to me, it was a vicious insult to my son. I looked over at Chloe, who was standing near the dining table holding a glass of Pinot Grigio. She had a smug, self-satisfied smirk on her face, clearly enjoying the scene playing out in front of her. "It's really not a big deal, Mark." Chloe chimed in, taking a slow sip of her wine. "Mom just wants a calm dinner with family, and my kids know how to act in a nice house. Leo is just a bit too energetic for Mom and Dad's taste right now. My son is incredibly well behaved. Is he perfect? No, he's 7 years old. But he is a polite, sweet, gentle kid who spends most of his time drawing dinosaurs and reading comic books. He has never destroyed furniture or screamed his lungs out at a dinner party, yet somehow, I was the one being excluded. My innocent child was deemed too loud and too disruptive for the Thanksgiving table, while Chloe's kids were allowed to run around causing an absolute racket simply because they belonged to the golden child. I could feel the hot sting of tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I was vibrating with anger, but I absolutely did not want to break down right there, not in front of all of them. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I took a very slow, deep breath, my hands shaking so hard I had to clench them into tight fists at my sides. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice dropping to a low, icy whisper that cut through the noise of the house. "But I absolutely cannot do this, not anymore." I turned on my heel, grabbed my coat from the rack, and walked straight out the front door without looking back. I didn't even wait for my mother to call after me, or for my dad to emerge from the garage, or for Chloe to offer another snarky comment. I just left. I slammed the heavy oak door behind me so hard the glass panes rattled in their frames. I got into my car and drove home in complete silence. My mind was racing, and my heart was incredibly heavy with a mixture of profound anger, deep betrayal, and overwhelming hurt. I had been treated like I wasn't even a real part of this family. They had treated my son like he was completely worthless, like we were second-class citizens in our own bloodline. I desperately wanted to turn the car around, kick the door open, and scream at them until my throat bled. But what would be the actual point? I already knew exactly where I stood with them. I wasn't going to get through to them. I wasn't going to change anything. They were broken, toxic people. When I got home, I paid Mrs. Higgins for the full evening, tipped her extra, and spent the rest of Thanksgiving night eating pizza on the couch with Leo, watching his favorite animated movies. He was thrilled to have me back so early, and holding him close was the only thing that kept me from completely losing my mind. 2 days passed in complete silence. I thought that maybe the holiday weekend would just blow over, that maybe I would just swallow my pride, let it go, and move on like I always did. But then, on Saturday morning, the text messages started pouring in. First, it was my dad. Is greater than hey Mark, checking in. How are you doing? Your mother and I really missed you at the table on Thursday. We are sorry for the way things went down, but you leaving like that really hurt your mother's feelings. Let's talk soon. The words didn't feel real, they felt entirely manufactured. I could tell they were just trying to smooth things over so they wouldn't have to feel guilty, but something about the timing felt incredibly fake. Then, exactly 10 minutes later, came the text from my sister, Chloe. Is greater than hey Mark. Look, sorry about Thursday, Mom was just stressed. Anyway, Derek and I are in a really tight spot this month with some unexpected bills. We need to borrow $3,500 just to float us through December. I know you have it since you got that promotion. It will only be temporary, I promise. Let me know when you can transfer it. I stared at the glowing screen of my phone in absolute, stunned disbelief. After everything, after they had treated me like absolute garbage. After they had purposefully excluded my son from a family holiday dinner because of a blatantly hypocritical, fabricated reason. After all of that disrespect, she actually had the unmitigated gall to ask me for $3,500. I was shaking with a white-hot, blinding anger. And yet, in that exact moment of fury, my mind became incredibly clear. I knew exactly what I had to do. I was not going to let them manipulate me anymore. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever again. I sat there staring at the text for a long time, letting the anger slowly build into a solid, unbreakable resolve. How could they? After the blatant hypocrisy of the Thanksgiving dinner, they had the absolute nerve to come to me with their hands out for cash. I felt like I was drowning in frustration. They had spent my entire life making me feel small, dismissing my son and me as afterthoughts, and now they wanted me to swoop in and be their financial savior when things weren't going their way. How incredibly convenient. I wasn't about to be the family fixer anymore. I was done being the reliable background character who always cleaned up everyone else's mess while being treated like dirt. So, I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over my phone keyboard. I wasn't going to let this slide. I aggressively began typing my response. Is greater than Chloe, I saw your message. I don't care how tough things are for you, but I will absolutely not help you out this time, or ever again. You and Mom made it perfectly clear that my son wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving, while your kids tore the house apart. I have zero interest in being treated like a second-class outsider anymore. I am not your personal ATM. You've taken advantage of my kindness for way too long. Figure it out yourself, I'm completely done. I stared at the paragraph for a second before I hit send. My heart pounded furiously in my chest, but I knew this was the only response that made logical sense. There was absolutely no way I could keep enabling their toxic behavior. I was not their bank, I was not their emotional punching bag, and I was definitely not their doormat anymore. The reply from Chloe came almost immediately, the typing bubble flashing frantically. Is greater than Mark, please don't be like this, you're being ridiculous. We're family. I didn't mean it like that on Thursday, Mom made the rules, not me. I am just asking for a little help. We've always helped you, right? We've always been there for you when you needed us. Don't punish my kids just because you're throwing a tantrum. I could feel my blood boil over. They've always helped me. I genuinely couldn't remember a single time my parents or Chloe had actually had my back when things were difficult for me. When my ex-wife left, they offered me nothing but empty platitudes and criticism. Sure, they made a superficial effort every now and then, but it was always strictly on their terms, always when it made them look good to the neighbors or the extended family. I could see right through the blatant manipulation. Chloe was trying to violently guilt-trip me, trying to gaslight me into feeling bad for finally standing up for myself and my son, but I wasn't falling for the trap anymore. I took a moment to breathe, then typed back my final message to her. Is greater than you've never been there for me, Chloe. Not once when it actually counted. You don't get to use me when it's convenient for your wallet and discard me when it's not. If you need to figure out your bills, you'll have to do it on your own. Do not contact me again. I hit send, blocked her number immediately, and tossed my phone onto the sofa, feeling a strange, intoxicating mix of profound relief and lingering frustration. I knew that what I had just done would likely stir up an absolute hurricane of family drama. It wasn't going to be easy, but I couldn't keep letting them walk all over me. And then, like clockwork, my phone started blowing up with calls. First, it was my dad again, leaving a voicemail asking me to stop acting like a child and consider the family. Then, it was a rapid-fire series of calls from my mother. I didn't pick up the first 3 times, my hands were shaking too much. But she absolutely did not stop. The phone rang again, and again, and again. Finally, I snapped and answered it. Mark, why on earth are you being like this? My mother demanded the second the line connected, her voice frantic and softer than I expected. Your sister is crying. Your father and I are incredibly upset. We've always been here for you, and you're tearing this family apart over a simple misunderstanding. Really? You've always been here for me? I replied, letting the full weight of my anger bleed into my voice. You specifically told me my son wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving because he was too loud, and then I walked into a house being destroyed by Chloe's kids. You still haven't even apologized for it. You treat me like I'm not even part of this family, but the second Chloe needs $3.5 grand, suddenly I'm the bad guy for saying no. It doesn't work like that anymore, Mom. There was a long, heavy pause on the other end of the line. I could hear my mother sigh, a sharp, exasperated sound I knew all too well. It was the sound of utter dismissal. Mark, it's not like that at all. You've always been a bit dramatic. She started, her tone shifting back to that patronizing sweetness. We just wanted a calm dinner, and Chloe's kids just got a little excited. You are overreacting. Now please, unblock your sister and help her out. Family helps family. No. I interrupted, my voice booming through my empty living room. You absolutely do not get to call me dramatic after what you did. You told me my kid was a problem. You insulted my son to my face. You ass. I've been your son for 34 years, and I have always been treated like a backup option. You don't get to act like nothing happened and expect me to just open my wallet. I'm done. I could hear my mother's voice cracking as she realized her usual tactics weren't working. Please, Mark, we're sorry, we just didn't want it to be too loud. Please don't do this to your sister. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You didn't want it to be too loud, but Chloe's kids can scream and break your lamps, and that's perfectly fine. You're so full of it. Look, Mom, I'm completely done. I've had enough. I am not your fallback plan anymore. Don't call me again. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked her number, followed quickly by my dad's number. The rest of the weekend passed in a bizarre blur. I went to bed feeling angry, betrayed, and physically exhausted, but also lighter than I had felt in decades. A week later, the inevitable escalation happened. My mother showed up at my front door. She didn't knock politely. She didn't try to call from a different number. She just appeared on my doorstep on a freezing Tuesday evening, pounding on the heavy wood. I opened the door to find her standing in the cold wind, her face pained but furiously determined. I could see she'd been crying, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. But I wasn't going to fall for the performance this time. I crossed my arms over my chest and leaned against the doorframe, studying her without saying a single word. Mark, she began, her voice wavering as she pulled her coat tighter around herself. You cannot just do this. We're your family. You can't just cut us off and block our numbers like a petulant teenager. I need you to understand. I do understand, Mom. I replied, my voice remarkably steady and cold. I understand that you have always made me feel second to Chloe. I understand that no matter what I do, how hard I work, or how good of a father I am to Leo, it is never enough for you. And I understand that if I keep allowing myself and my son to be treated like garbage, nothing will ever change. Her face twisted in genuine shock, like she couldn't comprehend that her punching bag was finally fighting back. She took a physical step backward. You don't mean that, she pleaded, reaching a hand out toward me. You can't. You're just upset, and I get it, but you don't understand what you're doing. This isn't just about you being jealous of Chloe, this is about the survival of the family. No, it's about me protecting my son from your toxic favoritism. I snapped back. I'm not coming back to the table, Mom. Go home. I stepped back, firmly closed the door in her face, and threw the deadbolt. I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to her muffled sobs through the wood until she finally gave up, got into her car, and drove away. Update 2. It has been exactly 6 months since that Thanksgiving disaster, and what I have learned in the time since has completely shattered any lingering guilt I might have had about walking away. For the first few months, the silence was deafening, but eventually, it became incredibly peaceful. I spent more time with Leo. We had Friday movie nights, we built intricate Lego cities, and I stopped constantly checking my phone with a pit of anxiety in my stomach. Then, about 3 weeks ago, I received a thick handwritten letter in the mail from my dad. I almost threw it directly into the fireplace without opening it, but my curiosity got the better of me. In the letter, my dad didn't demand money, and he didn't call me dramatic. Instead, he offered a surprisingly somber, partial apology. He admitted that he and Mom had treated Chloe differently for years, justifying it by convincing themselves that Chloe needed more help while I was independent enough to survive alone. He said they had confused my ability to survive without their support with not needing their love at all. It was a heavy letter, but it still felt like it was missing a massive piece of the puzzle. I found out what that missing piece was 3 days later when I ran into my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, in the produce aisle of the local grocery store. Aunt Linda has always been a bit of a gossip, but she has a good heart. When she saw me, she immediately rushed over and gave me a tight hug. Mark, honey, I am so incredibly sorry about what's happening with your parents' house, she said, her brow furrowed in deep sympathy. It is just a damn shame, what Chloe and Derek did to them. I froze, holding a bag of apples in my hand. Wait, what are you talking about? What happened to their house? Aunt Linda looked at me, her eyes widening in realization. Oh my God, They really didn't tell you? Mark. Chloe and Derek lost their house to foreclosure back in October. They were secretly drowning in credit card debt for years. They got evicted, and they moved all their stuff and all 3 kids into your parents' house 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. My jaw practically hit the floor. The grocery store around me seemed to stop spinning as the puzzle pieces violently snapped into place in my brain. Aunt Linda kept talking, completely unaware of the nuclear bomb she was dropping on my reality. Your parents' house is way too small for 7 people. So, your mom and dad were desperately trying to get a $50,000 home equity loan to build an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard for Chloe to live in. But because your parents are retired and on a fixed income, the bank denied them. Your mom told me they were going to use Thanksgiving dinner to sit you down, butter you up, and beg you to either co-sign a massive loan or drain your savings to pay for the construction. That's why they wanted you there alone. They needed you trapped at the table. I felt physically sick. The air was sucked completely out of my lungs. It all made perfect, sickening sense now. The quiet, child-free dinner was never about wanting a peaceful holiday. It was a carefully orchestrated, premeditated psychological trap. They explicitly demanded I leave Leo at home because they knew if my son was there, I would be distracted by him. They needed me completely cornered, sitting quietly at the dining table, drinking wine, feeling valued as a respected adult, so they could drop a massive financial anvil on my head, and guilt-trip me into taking on $50,000 of debt to save my golden child sister from her own reckless financial ruin. They didn't want Leo there because kids interrupt serious financial manipulations. And the only reason Chloe's kids were running wild that day was because Chloe, in her infinite, arrogant entitlement, absolutely refused to send her own kids to a babysitter, claiming, "My kids live here now, they aren't leaving the house on Thanksgiving." Chloe's sheer arrogance had accidentally blown up my parents' entire master plan. When I walked in and saw the blatant hypocrisy of her kids destroying the living room while mine was banished, I walked out before they even had the chance to serve the turkey, let alone spring their massive financial trap on me. That was why my mom was so frantic on the phone. That was why she showed up sobbing on my porch. She wasn't devastated about losing her son, she was having a total panic attack because her primary funding source had just walked out the door and blocked her number. And that text from Chloe asking for $3,500? That was just a desperate, last-ditch effort to squeeze some quick cash out of me for legal fees after the main plan failed. Discovering the absolute depths of their manipulation completely erased any lingering doubts I had. It was the ultimate closure. I didn't even confront them with this new information. I didn't need to. I just went home, hugged Leo tighter than I ever had before, and felt a profound, overwhelming sense of victory. I had dodged a $50,000 bullet simply by demanding basic respect for my son. This upcoming Thanksgiving, things are going to be very different. I am not begging for a seat at their toxic table ever again. Instead, Leo and I have invited 3 other single parents and their kids over to our house. We are going to have a chaotic, incredibly loud, messy dinner. Kids will be running around, things might get spilled, and it will be absolutely glorious. I finally understand that boundaries do not destroy healthy families, they expose the toxic ones. I lost a family that saw me only as a wallet and a backup plan, but I protected the only family that actually matters, my son. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out and allows us to bring you even more awesome stories. Thank you so much for watching. My sister set my house on fire after I refused to give it to her. My parents begged me to forgive her, but I let the police arrest her anyway. So I saved for 5 years, purchased my own house, fixed it up myself and thought, cool, life's finally stabilizing. My family saw this as a personal challenge. Before we get to the point where everything literally goes up in flames, let me start from the beginning. My name is Ethan, I'm in my late 20s and work in operations management for a medium corporation. It isn't flashy, but it's consistent. Long hours, problem solving, and preventing things from coming apart. That's pretty much how I've spent my entire life. As the one who figures it out. In my family, this led to my becoming the responsible one, which essentially meant that no one checked on him since he would be okay. My parents, Gregory and Catherine, always acted as if I was born knowing what I was doing. They assumed that if I struggled, I could manage it. Meanwhile, my little sister, Chloe, was treated as a precious collection. Dust her off. Keep her secure. Don't let her feel overwhelmed. Every move she made, no matter how dubious, was lauded as heroic, difficult, or too much for her to bear. I stopped expecting fairness years ago. Anyway, after 5 years of saving every penny, foregoing holidays, and working additional hours whenever possible, I eventually purchased a home. Nothing dramatic, simply a 2-bedroom cottage on the outskirts of town. Most people would have turned it down since it required a lot of effort, but I felt I could create something substantial out of it if I was patient. The apartment had ancient paint peeling like thin paper, flooring that looked like someone had dragged metal furniture over them for a decade, and a kitchen with cabinetry so bent I could see light through the gaps. But it was mine. No roommates, no landlords, and no shared walls. For the first time, I went into a space and felt relieved, as if the years of eating inexpensive food and maintaining my own car may finally be worth something. Renovating the house became my second full-time job. I'd work a 9-hour shift, come home, change clothes, and tackle whatever problem the house threw at me. I watched video after tutorial, till my eyes burned. Some evenings, I fell asleep on the floor, with tools all about me. My shoulders hurt for several weeks. Weekends were reserved for larger jobs like rebuilding the bathroom, removing old flooring and repairing the sagging deck. My friend Marcus came by to assist with the bigger items. He's been my best buddy since high school and knows enough about my family to understand why I am the way I am. He kept joking that the house would be my evidence of survival after years of playing the supporting role in my own family. His words were not wrong. When I eventually brought my parents to see the development, they seemed proud in that low-key manner folks do when they don't want to make a big deal about anything. My father glanced around and remarked, "You were always handy, son." As if it was evident I could restore an entire house on my own. My mother smiled and thought it was lovely. Not remarkable, not astounding, simply pleasant. They intended well. I know they did. But it felt more like they were marking something off a list. If Chloe had done the same task, they would have hosted a celebration complete with decorations and speeches. Speaking of Chloe, my folks still talk about her wedding as if it were the highlight of the decade. It's been years, yet they still talk about it all the time. The colors, the setting, how magnificent it was, how proud they were of their daughter. It wasn't until long later that I discovered how much they paid for it. I never received that kind of enthusiasm or support. When I mentioned that the down payment was difficult for me, my parents stated they wished they could contribute more evenly, but Chloe needed it at the moment. Like, need only matters when it's hers. But the reality is, I didn't buy the house to impress anyone. I bought it because I wanted something that couldn't be taken away or changed to fit someone else's tale. Nonetheless, as I stood outside and looked at the home after accomplishing the last of the main tasks, I anticipated to feel a part of something larger. Instead, I felt stable and strong, as if I had finally created something that belonged totally to me. The thing was, I hadn't realized that the others around me didn't perceive it the same way. For me, it was a home. For my family, it was just available. And that distinction is where everything went wrong. I intended the housewarming to be small. 8 or 10 persons, at most. Only my family, Marcus, and 2 coworkers assisted me in moving the heavier items. Nothing fancy. I bought a few pizzas, laid up some folding chairs because the living room furniture hadn't come yet, and planned a casual afternoon where folks could see the work I'd done. Chloe arrived 15 minutes early with 12 individuals I did not know. They swarmed through the front entrance, as if it were an open event. I hardly had time to digest it before Catherine clapped her hands and stated it was wonderful that Chloe added to the family enthusiasm. I was about to say something, when Gregory interrupted me with, "It's family. Stop being weird, Ethan. More people means more love." It didn't feel like love. It seemed like siege warfare. Chloe walked in as if she were the host, not me. Her little son Oliver was on her hip and she quickly let him go about the home. The guests she invited strolled around, opening drawers and complimenting items that didn't require them, such as the hallway light switch. Her spouse, Gavin, came in last. He had the same expression he normally had. Chin slightly up, eyes searching the room as if he's assessing a business venture he didn't pay for. He gave a slow nod as if he accepted the plan, which irritated me more than I expected. While everyone settled down, Chloe began making comments that sounded like jokes but did not land as such. "Wow, Ethan. 3 bedrooms. What exactly are you planning here? A bachelor compound?" I mustered a modest smile. She continued going. "It's kind of wild. One guy with all this space. What are you going to do? Talk to the walls? Must be nice having no real responsibilities." A few folks cracked a joke. I did not. Gregory jumped in with his own brand of helpful commentary. "Well, you do have extra space. Chloe is simply pointing out the obvious." Catherine contributed her own perspective. "I always said you'd grow into something like this when you finally settle down. Maybe it'll push you to think long term." I didn't know what to say. They made it sound as if I had purchased a toy rather than a house. We began the house tour, something I had not wanted to do yet, but Chloe urged. She moved ahead of the group, opening doors as if she were inspecting property she already owned. When she entered the first bedroom, she turned to her audience and remarked, "This would be perfect for Oliver. Look at that natural light. He needs sunlight." I blinked, believing she was exaggerating. She was not. Gavin leaned against the doorframe, grinning as if everything made complete sense to him. He answered, "Yeah, I can see this fitting our needs pretty well." Our needs. He stated it as if he had already moved in. Marcus stayed at my side the entire time. He watched the incident develop with a stiff look. He was not mistaken. Chloe continued to treat each area as if she were shopping for a kid. She did not bother to supervise. Oliver was dragging a plastic toy across the wooden floor. I spent 3 weekends sanding and sealing. Every scratch caused my stomach to plummet. Nobody stopped him, not even Chloe, who was too preoccupied discussing how she had arranged the furnishings in Oliver's future room. Or, by the time we were in the kitchen, one of Chloe's extra visitors had opened the fridge and inquired about the availability of more beverages. I politely requested him to cease searching through my belongings. Instead of apologizing, he smiled and added, "Chloe said this place was basically family property." I stood there, wondering whether I had misheard him. Chloe gave me a look that suggested I was being theatrical. "Relax, Ethan. Nobody cares about a fridge. It's just family." Marcus murmured something under his breath that sounded like a threat. I considered asking him to repeat it. As the trip came to a close, I realized I hadn't said anything throughout. The entire event consisted of Chloe going ahead, pointing, assigning, redesigning, and behaving as if the home was some kind of common resource that I had selfishly locked away. People had only just eaten their pizza when Chloe clapped her hands loudly enough to cut every conversation in half. She stood in the midst of my living room, as if she were preparing to give a class. I froze in the middle of a sentence. Marcus peered over from the couch and some of the people she had brought quieted down. Chloe grinned too widely. I didn't move. I wasn't giving her the stage. But she took it anyway. "I have a plan," she said, taking a manila folder from her large purse. I took a step closer and asked, "A plan for what?" This was my housewarming, not a strategy meeting. She ignored it, opening the folder and pulling out pieces of paper she had printed. That alone annoyed me. She had come prepared, deliberate, and confident. "Since Oliver needs a yard and stability," she started off. "And since you have all this unused space, Gavin and I came up with a solution that benefits everyone." I crossed my arms and straightened my shoulders, indicating that I would not entertain whatever this was. But she did not back down. If anything, she straightened up, as if expecting a claim. "You transfer the deed to us," she added, as if she were requesting a cup of sugar. "It makes the most sense. A young family needs a home more than a single man does." The room fell dead silent. Gavin stepped up beside her, hands in his pockets, like he was here to negotiate the merger of two companies. "Your mortgage isn't crazy," he said, nodding toward me. "It's doable, and we already mapped out how we'll use the rooms." I abruptly interrupted him. "You're talking like you own the place." Gavin smirked as if I were being exaggerated. "We're being practical. You're a grown man with extra rooms, and your nephew actually needs the space." Chloe laid another sheet on the coffee table. "Here's how it works. You transfer the house to us and then you can rent the basement apartment we'll finish. It'll be perfect for you." Something warm crawled up the back of my neck as I heard her confident voice. I came closer, dropping but not softening my voice. "I'm not renting anything from either of you. I bought this house and renovated every inch of it myself." Chloe brushed it aside as if it didn't matter. Yes, you worked hard, but stability for a child is more important than your pride." Then the figures were released. Chloe pointed to a page with highlighted lines. "The mortgage is around $1,300 per month." I did not respond. Gavin moved forward. "We can contribute $500, maybe $550 when things are going well. You'd cover the rest because you make more." I laughed sharply and loudly. "You want me to give you my house and pay most of the mortgage?" Chloe asked without blinking. "It's not giving. It's helping your family. If you say no, you're choosing money over blood." This time I didn't hold back. "You don't get to guilt trip me in my own living room." Chloe attempted to maintain eye contact, but mine didn't move. She glanced away first. Gregory cleared his throat and stepped forward, attempting to appear indifferent. "Let's just hear both sides." I stopped him off. "There aren't two sides. There's my house and they're attempting to take it. Catherine stepped in immediately, hands raised as if she were the referee. Ethan, honey, stay calm. Your sister is just trying to solve a problem. No need to get so tense. She was staring at me. She made up a problem and her solution is stealing my home. Marcus rose from the couch, arms folded. Gavin snorted and puffed up. This isn't a negotiation. This is theft with extra steps. You don't understand how housing law works. I read that if you have extra rooms and refuse to assist family members, a court can. Marcus chuckled sharply and without amusement. That's not a law. That's something you saw online. Gavin's eyes widened as if he had been caught cheating on an exam. It's a thing courts look at. Neglect. Stop, I spat out. Don't pretend you know anything about law. You downloaded one PDF and now you think you're a judge. Chloe's expression got cocky. So you hate your nephew? That's what this is. You'd rather have him grow up in an apartment without a yard than support us. You are heartless. And I moved closer, looming above her. Do not use your child as a shield. This is about you desiring something I've earned. The room was silent for a moment. Everyone is waiting to see what I'll do next. Chloe looked around as if she expected someone to back her up. Nobody did. Not even the weird guest she brought in. I pointed to the door. All of you get out now. Chloe gasped, like if I had smacked her. You're kicking out your own family? Yes, was my response. Before you try stealing anything else. Gavin grumbled something under his breath but did not dispute. Gregory appeared astonished. Catherine covered her lips, but I didn't mind. Marcus stepped beside me like a wall. I opened the door wider. Out. And one by one, they departed. That's when the house stopped feeling safe. And this was merely the beginning. My phone lit up the morning after I kicked everyone out before I even got out of bed. At first I assumed it was Marcus checking in. No, that was Chloe. A wall of text dominated the screen. Paragraphs, voice notes, screenshots of stuff I never said, and lengthy guilt trips written as if she were auditioning for a theatrical speech. She didn't even attempt to conceal the insults. You're not a real man if you can't help your own family. You only care about money. You're cold and selfish. Oliver deserves better than an uncle like you. She alternated between threatening me, sobbing digitally with sad emoticons, and lecturing me on what it takes to be a brother. There was no pause between texts, only non-stop alerts. Then Gavin started. His tone was not hostile. It seemed condescending, as if he believed my reaction last night was only a little setback. Let us know when you're ready to have a mature conversation. We can work out the rent terms when you calm down. I'll start looking at contractors for the basement. Don't worry. I'll pick affordable ones. He texted as if he were the owner. I banned his phone number. He located another one and texted me from there. He also gave me a list of proposed modifications that he wanted me to do before they moved in. I did not react to either of them. By lunchtime, Chloe had shifted strategy and made the battle public. She wrote on social media that I booted out a woman and her infant in front of witnesses, and that I value empty rooms more than family. People who were unaware of the circumstances commented with love and "Stay strong, mama" under her messages. She even shared a few images from inside my home. In the comments, several of the individuals she brought tagged themselves in each other, as if it were a typical gathering rather than an ambush. I wasn't shocked when she twisted it. I was amazed by how quickly people believed her. Gregory called at about 3 o'clock. I expected him to start with something logical, noting how ridiculous the previous night had been. Instead, he sighed as if I had caused it all. Ethan, can't you just apologize and talk to your sister? She's hurting. She's not hurting, I corrected him. She's angry because she didn't get her way. He brushed it off. You know how emotional she gets. Don't escalate it. Catherine then called. I sent both of them screenshots. Proof, actual texts and voice messages in which Chloe called me heartless and Gavin pretended to have already moved in. Catherine continued to minimize it. Gregory interrupted with, "You're being arrogant, son. You're always stuck in your ways. Just be the bigger person." I nearly laughed. She attempted to take my house. How am I the problem? Neither of them responded. Marcus paid a visit that night. I showed him each message. He did not sugarcoat anything. This is harassment, he stated. You need to document everything, including screenshots and timestamps, and upgrade your security. People like this don't stop just because they're embarrassed. There's something in Chloe's tone that felt unstable, as if she'd convinced herself she was owed something. So I installed exterior cameras the following morning. Doorbell cam, backyard cam, new locks, motion lights. Nothing fancy, but enough to help me sleep better. I stopped opening the door until I had checked the camera first. They recorded to the cloud, which made me feel a little safer, but the majority of what they captured at night was shape and motion rather than clean faces. When Gregory and Catherine learned about the cameras, they acted as if I had bought attack dogs. "You're escalating," Gregory stated. "You're treating your sister like a criminal." Catherine added, "This is unnecessary." "No," I said. "This is protection." They refused to accept that. Family gatherings changed quickly. I stopped going and relatives who only knew Chloe's version began acting as if I had committed a crime. I received texts from cousins repeating her lines. "Family members should not fight over a house. You could have handled it differently. She just wants stability for her child." No one seemed to care that the stability she desired was the result of years of work I had done alone. Even worse, word spread that I exploded at the party, as if raising my voice in response to someone demanding ownership of my home was an unreasonable reaction. Gavin claimed I threatened him, which never happened. I did not threaten to hurt him. I did not make any violent promises, as he had told people. I shut him down and told him to leave. That is it. By the end of the week, it felt like half of my family had transformed into Chloe's echo chamber. Marcus remained consistent though. Every day, he reminded me to avoid emoji-filled traps and manipulative messages. He advised me to save everything and maintain a calm exterior. "People like them use chaos as leverage," he explained. "Do not give them more." I tried, but each day felt like a new level of disrespect, an accusation, or an attempt to make me feel guilty for not handing over something I built myself. I already had a work trip scheduled for the following week. It should have been a straightforward 2-day conference out of state. Instead, I left with a heavy tension in my chest. As I locked the door behind me the morning I left, I looked back at my house. For the first time since purchasing it, I did not feel excited or proud when I looked at it. I felt uneasy. Something was approaching, and I could feel it. I was halfway through the second day of my business trip when my phone rang with an unknown number. Normally, I ignore them, but something told me to pick up. A calm voice introduced himself as a member of the fire department in my hometown. He gave my address and then said the words I never expected to hear. "There's been a fire at your property." Everything around me vanished for a split second. My laptop screen, the conference room, and the notebook in front of me are gone. My first instinct was not even fear. It was disbelief. I inquired whether they had the wrong address. They did not. I grabbed my bag, informed my supervisor that I had an emergency, and got into my car. The drive back was a blur. I don't even remember the roads. Only the pressure in my chest increased as I got closer to home. Marcus called because one of my neighbors had his phone number after helping me with the deck. "They're saying your place is on fire," he told me. "I'm heading over right now." When I finally arrived at my street, I noticed the flashing lights first. Fire trucks, police cars, a few neighbors standing outside in their jackets, and then I noticed it. My house, or what remained of it. The right side was completely blackened. The windows had been blown out. Smoke was still coming from the roof. My stomach dropped so hard that I felt lightheaded. What hit harder was seeing Gregory and Catherine standing with 2 officers, talking quickly and waving their hands as if they were defending someone. Catherine approached me before I could say anything. "Ethan, honey, don't panic. These things happen." "These things?" I inquired. My voice sounded sharper than I intended. Gregory stepped in quickly. "My house is destroyed. We don't know what caused it yet, so don't go accusing anybody. Fires start accidentally all the time." I had not accused anyone. They were saying it before I had even processed the scene. One of the firefighter investigators approached me. He introduced himself, asked if I was the owner, and began walking me through what they had seen thus far. His tone was professional, but firm. They deemed the fire suspicious. The point of origin appeared to be intentional. There were signs that someone had been near the side entrance recently. When they inquired about cameras, I pulled up the clips. The footage showed a figure cutting across the yard's edge toward the side entrance. Hood up and head down. Nothing you could positively identify from a grainy nighttime video. The feed then dropped, as if the power or router had been disrupted. A few minutes later the fire started. Then Catherine said, "Remember, Our daughter lives nearby, she would never do anything like this. The investigator looked perplexed. Ma'am, we didn't mention any suspects. That said it all. The police wanted to speak with me. They led me to the back of a cruiser, which was quieter. They inquired about conflicts, recent threats, and anyone who may have a motive. I opened my phone to show them everything. Chloe's lengthy messages, Gavin's smug texts, public posts, and even the housewarming chaos. That's a lot, the officer stated. No. Do you have the names of the people who were at the housewarming? Not all, I informed them. She brought strangers, but she posted about it, and they tagged themselves in the comments. I screenshotted it all. They photographed my phone screen, asked follow-up questions, and carefully documented everything. As I walked back toward the curb, I noticed Chloe standing a few feet away, arms crossed and eyes red as if she had been crying. She was not being questioned. She was not upset by the fire. She seemed upset that I was giving the police information. When she saw me, she immediately went into performance mode. I can't believe you're letting them think I had anything to do with this, she said, her voice trembling. I'm your sister, I'm your mother. Why would I ever hurt you? I didn't say she did anything. I did not imply it, but she responded as if she had already been accused. Gavin stood beside her trying to appear composed. You need to be careful what you're saying to officers, said the man. You're emotional, you don't want to create a false version of events. He was staring at me. I told them the truth. He gulped hard. Just don't let anger cloud your judgment, said a guy who had attempted to claim my house 2 weeks before. Marcus finally arrived and went right to my side. You good? He inquired quietly. No, I replied. Not even close. He remained there, a steady presence, while Gregory and Catherine hovered on the opposite side of the yard. I overheard Gregory tell an officer, my daughter would never do this. She's a caring person. Whoever told you otherwise is exaggerating. The officer responded, Sir, we're gathering facts. We haven't been told anything specific. Catherine kept looking at me as if I was the one who started the fire by cooperating. When another investigator approached me with clarifying questions, Gregory stepped forward like a defense lawyer. Do you need to keep asking him questions? He is upset. Consider saving it for later. I said, Dad, let them do their job. Catherine looked at me as if I had betrayed her. The questioning continued. More evidence was collected. More officers are walking around the property. Every few minutes, someone would ask me another question about the timeline or motive. Each time, Chloe and Gavin became more tense. Eventually, one officer approached me and spoke quietly. I'm not saying anything officially yet, but the pattern of damage and the timing lines up with someone who knew you weren't home. My teeth were grinding. I didn't say anything. When I looked back at my parents, they were huddled around Chloe, as if they were comforting the victim, herself. It was obvious by the time the firefighters had cleared the scene and secured the area. The evidence pointed to Chloe. And my parents were not simply refusing to see it. They were already planning their defense. The investigation proceeded faster than anyone expected. A week after the fire, the police called me early in the morning and asked me to come inside. I sat in a small room alongside an investigator and a detective. Both of them appear serious, yet calm. They laid out their findings. There are traces of accelerant near the back entrance. Shoe prints that match the brand worn. My cloud footage captured a hooded figure moving toward the side entrance before the feed dropped. A neighbor's camera caught her car near my street while she claimed to be at home, and the history of threats prior to the fire. When they said, "We're issuing charges," my chest tightened. Not satisfaction or fear, but the weight of everything becoming real. Chloe was arrested later in the afternoon. I did not receive any news from the police. I heard it from Gregory, who called me in a panic, breathing heavily as if someone had died. "Ethan, what did you do?" he demanded. "They came to her house and took her away in handcuffs. She's married. She has a child." "I didn't do anything," I told them. "They arrested her based on evidence." "You could have stopped it," he said. "You should have told them this was a misunderstanding. Families don't destroy each other like this." My jaw clenched. "She burned my house down." Catherine cut into the line, crying loudly. "She made a mistake. She wasn't thinking clearly. She's under stress. You know how fragile she is. She has a baby. How could you let this happen to her? How could she do this to me?" I replied. Catherine sobbed harder. "You can still fix it. You can retract your statements. Tell them you exaggerated. Clarify the timelines. Say you're unsure. Anything. Just help your sister before her whole life is ruined. I almost laughed at the absurdity. I told the truth. I'm not lying for anyone. Gregory's voice dropped cold and sharp. You are ruining this family. No, I said. Chloe did that. He hung up. 2 hours later, Gavin posted on social media claiming she was unjustly targeted and betrayed by her own brother who hates mothers and doesn't understand family loyalty. His followers ate it up. He painted her as a victim of a cruel system and an even crueler sibling. Then Gavin messaged me from a new number trying to sound tough. You crossed the line, man. Fix this. Drop everything or things are going to get bad. I ignored it. He sent another. I mean it. Don't underestimate me. Still ignored. That evening I stepped out of my car in my driveway. What was left of it? When I heard someone walk up behind me fast, I turned just in time to see Gavin rushing toward me with his jaw clenched and fists balled. You think you're some kind of hero? He snapped. You think you're going to win? You're nothing without family. Nothing. Before he could grab me, I shoved him backward. He stumbled, but came right back, swinging sloppily. I sidestepped, grabbed his arm and pinned him against the hood of his own car. He struggled, but he wasn't strong. He fought like a man who thought bluster was enough. You want to try that again? I said through my teeth. Marcus pulled into the driveway right then and saw the whole thing. He got out ready if needed, but he didn't have to lift a finger. I had Gavin completely locked. Get him off your property and call the cops, Marcus said. Gavin tried one more weak shove, so I released him with a hard push that sent him stumbling several feet back. He tripped, caught himself, then pointed at me with a shaking hand. You'll regret this, he hissed. You're destroying our family. Your family destroyed itself, I said. Now get off my property. He scurried to his car and peeled out like a teenager who just lost a fight he started. Marcus walked over. You okay? I'm fine, I said. He won't be back. You know he tried to put on a tough guy act, right? Marcus said. You barely touched him. Guy fights like a wet sock. For the first time in weeks, I almost cracked a smile. The next few days were worse with Gregory and Catherine. They stopped pretending to be neutral. Every call was another attempt to twist my arm. Just tell the court you misunderstood. Think about Oliver. He needs his mother. Why are you doing this? Why are you being cruel? Each time I gave the same answer. I'm not lying. Catherine cried every call. Gregory yelled every call. Both blamed me for everything. But Marcus stayed steady through all of it. You're not doing this to her, he kept reminding me. She did it to herself. She's responsible for her choices. You're just telling the truth. That's what kept me grounded. Facts do not change just because people cry about them. As the case progressed, my parents became colder. Shorter texts, calls, and accusations. It wasn't long before the tone changed from begging to resentment, like they despised me for not sacrificing myself in the way they expected. One night, after receiving another message from Catherine calling me heartless, I finally realized something that should have been obvious long ago. I was not losing a sister. I was also losing my parents. The court was not quick. It was not satisfying. It was nothing like people imagined. It was paperwork, waiting rooms, phone calls, meetings with attorneys, and brief hearings in which everything felt heavier than the time allotted to discuss it. However, the case progressed, and the truth eventually surrounded Chloe from all sides. The plea agreement was reached in the middle of the summer. Because the house was unoccupied and she had no prior record, the charge she pled guilty to was not the maximum they could have imposed. The prosecutor proposed a deal that guaranteed restitution while keeping the case out of trial. The judge suspended jail time on the condition that she pay, comply, and stay clean, and warned her on the record that a single violation would result in a sentence. She took it. There was no dramatic speech, no final attempt to deny anything, and no major emotional breakdown. Just a quiet admission to the charges because the evidence was too clear to fight. Guilty. Her sentence included probation, mandatory counseling, community service, and something more important: court-ordered restitution. She owed tens of thousands in damages. It wasn't a random number. It was related to the fire investigation, insurance assessment, and the cost of the damage she caused. The restitution was structured as a long-term payment plan that she could not avoid. wage garnishment, tax return seizure, and financial restrictions. It was the only time the court seemed to recognize what I had lost. In addition, insurance compensated me fairly. They covered temporary housing, personal property losses, structural rebuilding estimates, debris removal, and a portion of the replacement cost for items purchased during renovations. They did not hand me one large check. The initial funding covered temporary housing and immediate losses. The larger portion came down to a choice: rebuild and claim full replacement value, or reach a final settlement and walk away. It was difficult to get through the paperwork, and I argued with an adjuster several times, but the payout arrived, enough to recover but not enough to forget. The house's remains were inspected, photographed, documented, and then cleared. After the insurance settlement was finalized and it was clear that I was not going to rebuild on that lot, I sold the land to a small development company and let them deal with whatever happened next. I did not want to step foot on that property again. Meanwhile, child services became involved through the court system. Any parent who commits arson, particularly against their family, is flagged. They assessed Oliver's living situation, scheduled supervised visits, and required parental classes. It was a mess, and none of it was my fault. But in my parents' eyes, it was still all about me. Gregory and Catherine stood outside the courthouse on the day Chloe was sentenced, waiting for me. Catherine had tears running down her cheeks. Gregory appeared to have aged 7 years. Neither of them looked at me in the same way a parent would look at a son, but rather as someone who had ruined their carefully arranged world. Catherine was the first to step forward. "Ethan, enough is enough," she said, her voice shaking. "She's had her punishment. Please stop now." "Stop what?" I requested. "I'm done. The court handled it." "You didn't have to push it this far," the woman said. "She's married. She has a child. He needs stability." I looked at her, astounded that she could say that with a straight face. He needed stability before she set my house on fire. Catherine flinched as if I had slapped her. Gregory stepped in. "You got your compensation, you got your payout. You're starting over anyway. Just drop the hostility. Let her rebuild." "You think compensation fixes everything?" I was wondering. "You think money replaces the place I spent months rebuilding or the feeling of being hunted in my own family?" "You're being cruel," she said softly. "No," I said. "I'm being honest. Something you two haven't been with me in a long time." Their expressions hardened. Not because they disagreed, but because they were finally hearing something they had never wanted acknowledged. It did not end there. They tried one more angle. "Do it for Oliver," Catherine implored. "He needs his family." "He has family," I corrected myself. "Just not me." That was all. No yelling, no lengthy speech, just the absolute truth. I walked away as they remained frozen on the courthouse steps. That night I blocked Chloe, Gavin, and eventually Gregory and Catherine. It wasn't vengeance. It wasn't rage. It was about survival. You can't have people in your life who will watch your house burn and then blame you for the smoke. The final part of the insurance settlement was processed 3 months after the court case was closed. I had enough to rebuild or relocate. I chose neither of those old paths. Instead, I accepted a job offer from a branch of my company located 2 states away. Better pay, weather, and distance. I packed the little I had left. The fire destroyed most of my belongings, so I moved into a clean, quiet apartment with new walls that did not carry old echoes. Marcus clapped my back as we finished unloading the last box. "Feels like the first normal chapter you've had in a long time," he told me. He was correct. There was no celebration, no victory lap, no dramatic rebirth. Just silence. The kind of quiet a man notices after years of tolerating noise. I found my rhythm again. Work, sleep, and small routines centered on my life, and no one else's. The first time I cooked in the new kitchen, I didn't consider who might knock on my door or demand something from me. Months later, sitting on my new couch, I recalled something that had stayed with me my entire life. My family always labeled me as strong. People believe that is praise. It is not. Being the strong one was just an excuse to take from me, assuming I'd never break, complain, or require anything in return. I'm no longer their strong one. I am just a man living in peace. Far away from those who mistook my stability for something they could exploit. For the first time in my life, that was sufficient. At my engagement dinner, my mom toasted my sister, said she was worthy of my fiancé. I exposed her secret texts about me to the entire family. My older sister Sophia was the golden child early on. My mother told me she was smarter, prettier, and more talented daily. My mom worried why I couldn't get straight A's like Sophia when I got a B on a test. Mom felt my soccer effort was cute but reminded me Sophia won the volleyball state championship. My parents preferred my decent college over Sophia's Ivy League. I was raised as the backup daughter in case the actual one died. I quit at 18 and remained away. After building my life and work, I met Daniel. Dan was my sole want. His kindness and support helped me. He proposed 5 months ago and I accepted immediately. We had an engagement dinner with both families. Emily said having my mother there would be great and new. First hour at a posh restaurant meal went well. My mother's warm words about my outfit surprised me. Sophia arrived late. She came in a too formal white suit to negotiate her promotion. Sophia's arrival brightened Mom's eyes again. Sophia's accomplishments was the topic for 30 minutes. I tried to resume the engagement, but my mother mentioned my sister. My mother stood and suggested toasting. Wanted her to compliment me. She lifted her glass and said Louis was great and she was thrilled for him. Too bad he met the wrong sister, she told Sophia. She joked but continued. She thought Sophia fit Dan better. She said Sophia was prettier, wiser, and worthy of him. She hoped Daniel knew what he was getting with me but indicated upgrading was possible. No one spoke across the table. Dan's parents were furious. Dan seems to want to disappear. Sophia grinned like she agreed with everything. My hands trembled and cheeks burned. My 26 years of rejection returned immediately. I stood up and told my mother I had something to say. Her Sophia texts were available when I set up her new phone 2 months ago. Each secret text about me was revealed. My mother called me embarrassing. Sophia said I excelled Daniel. Mom agreed, saying she didn't see what he saw in me. Sophia's supper flirting with Dan was planned to turn his head. I saw both faces go. My mother complained I misread. Sophia thought I was flashy. Daniel stood and ordered them out. My mother sobbed because I ruined the family. No, I said. She damaged it. 26 years ago, she said I was never good enough. When they departed, Chloe's mother hugged me and said I handled it better. In addition, my mother doesn't know I screenshotted every message. A wonderful addition to family discussions with aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents is coming. I contemplate the send button in my car outside the restaurant for 20 minutes. Prepared family group chat screenshots. Transmitting is permanent. The meeting made me shake, yet I felt clearer than in years. I get chilly steering wheel hands and breath that fogs the glass. I read. Screenshots again. Every awful text is there. My mother called me embarrassing. Sophia said I outperformed Daniel. Their black and white strategy tonight. Press send. The message reaches 39 relatives. Every angry conversation between my mother and Sophia, including the intention to flirt with Daniel tonight, is screenshotted. Read receipts instantly. 1, 3, 7, 15. Phone messages beep. The screen flashes regularly. I ignore notifications despite buildup. 2 callers. My phone is muted and in the cup holder. Daniel silently takes the passenger seat as he spots me in the parking lot. My phone is softly turned off by him. I sob as he clutches my hand. His folks got us home safely. As Chloe's mother served tea, I contemplated my actions on the couch. Her questions are absent. She circles my back while sitting next to me. Dan and Lillian's father chat quietly in the kitchen. Their tones rumbled, not words. Our guest room contains Chloe's mom. Tomorrow morning, start my phone. 215 warns. That amount scares me. Lillian's mother sorts texts awake. On the couch with her reading glasses, she tells me which family members support and attack me. Uncle Andrew writes a long letter claiming he always thought my mother treated me differently but never realized how horrible it was. Regrets not speaking sooner. My Aunt Olivia calls to discuss my mother's abuse for an hour. Mom always needed someone to degrade to feel superior. Olivia was pre-birth objective. She recalls family gatherings when my mother criticized her food, clothes, and spouse. She stops justifying my mother's actions and apologizes for not protecting me. She cryingly says she should have been braver. My father's 3 cousins spoke without Sophia, grandmother, or mother. Over time, they remember my mother's comments. She mentioned things during unguarded family gatherings. My relative says my mother said I was lucky to have a job despite my poor performance. Another cousin writes, my mother complained that I embarrassed the family by not being as accomplished as Sophia. The pattern of her cruelty is even more extensive than I realized. My mother texted regret. She calls me unappreciative. She claims I humiliated her in front of the family. She demands the communications be deleted and apologized. She'll visit my house if I don't react. Security blocks her when Daniel changes our access code. He calls and describes my mother while I read. Chloe texts Daniel to try something new. She admits fault and requests a private conversation. Dan immediately records and shows me her response. Without responding, he disables her number. He's assured. Father calls 3 days post-dinner. Tired voice. He claims my mother was emotional yet gave a bad dinner speech. Look into family therapy, he says. I won't repair anything my mother doesn't want. His silence lasts. After agreeing, he hangs up. Daniel's BFF Ethan brings takeout. He says Daniel's parents alerted half his family to the turmoil. Ethan thought his mother's breaking touch was greatest due of her nasty sibling. Validation from outside my family calms me. Over dinner, Ethan remembers his mother's boundaries. He made my first laugh in days. Lillian texts me 3 days after Ethan departs. She wants coffee. I haven't seen her because my mother made excuses for years. She'll drive 2 hours to me. Meet at a little cafe near my flat. Lillian smiles at me despite her age. She delivers lattes and we sit by the window. She reached out after seeing everything in the group. She claims my mother mistreated me as a youngster. She stopped attending family occasions 5 years ago because she couldn't stand it. Her voice quietens as she apologizes for not speaking sooner. She claims she was too young to discreetly question my mother. While having Christmas dinner at 12, my mother spoke about Sophia's accomplishments for an hour without addressing me. Lillian sobbed for me at home that night. She squeezes my hand across the table. She considers me courageous for standing up and proud for 2 hours over what transpired. Her rocky connection with her mother and how imposing limits improved her life are described. We say farewell and promise to communicate. She wants in since my mother doesn't restrict who I see. Her support makes driving home easier. Daniel and I eat as the family discusses. My phone buzzes so much I placed it face down on the table. Dan reads alerts. His face tightens and he shows me the screen. Grandmother wrote a lengthy defense of my mother. She claims I exaggerate and am sensitive. She thinks I'm exaggerating about the food and my mother loves both daughters equally. She thinks I'm splitting the family for a mistake. Rapid responses. Uncle Andrew claims he didn't misunderstand the screenshots. Aunt Olivia is fed of supporting my mother's abuse. Someone I hardly know advocates forgiving my mother because family is essential. Another relative claims family doesn't tolerate abuse. Threads grow as more join. My Uncle James recommends to relax before saying anything regrettable. Nobody listens. Reviving old grudges and conflicts increases fighting. Bad parenting is blamed. Someone recalls a sad 9-year-old wedding. The discussion centers on anger and blame. Dan turns off my phone's alerts. He suggests no reading tonight. I feel ill knowing my grandma is protecting my mother after seeing what she witnessed. Dan gets takeout and we watch a movie, but I check my phone. I got a letter 4 days later. On the envelope, my mother wrote. Thicker than expected, my stomach lowers. After sitting on the couch, I open it. 6 pages of my mother's immaculate cursive fall out front and back. Not calling her disturbs her. She says I misinterpreted the dinner toast joke. She insists I'm misremembering my upbringing, that she's always loved both daughters equally. She said helping me succeed was hard. She talks about helping me with schoolwork or driving me to soccer practice like it erases everything else. Sophia is worried I'm killing our family. She considers me selfish and cruel for not forgiving her. Multiple alterations occur in the letter. She never apologizes. She never apologizes for dinner comments. She considers me spiteful and oversensitive. The last page says she'll forgive me if I openly apologize to her and Sophia in family group chat. Her gestures show devotion, like nothing she written meanly, Mom. After 2 readings my hands shake. I become angry and move. Just take my keys and tell Dan to walk. He wants to join me but I need privacy. I relax by walking the block 3 times in the cold. Mom doesn't recognize her error. The victim mentality persists. It gets worse with letters. Daniel spots me on the couch while using my phone at night. I sit next to him and he asks if I want to go away for the weekend. For a few days he suggests relaxing and not checking our phones. Constant alerts and family turmoil fatigue me, so I agree instantly. We pack up and drive 3 hours to a mountain B&B the next morning. Small yet good, with hiking trails nearby. On day 1 of woods travel, my family is not mentioned. Emily spotlights unusual birds and plants. We listen beside a creek on rocks. We trek to a valley-wide view the second day. We observe clouds while eating packed sandwiches. My phone is generally in my bag. I can focus without texting and ringing. I realize I've wasted energy satisfying my mother. I considered her opinion in every decision. Knowing she'd compare every success to Sophia hollowed them. Wanting her approval hurt my career. On that summit, seeing the countryside, I realized she'll never satisfy me. She won't see me well. Despite agony, the thought is soothing. No more trying. Emily holds my hand as we wait till sunset. Lighter homeward. Distance showed me my mother's perspective doesn't define me. Back home, I activate my phone. 53 new posts. Most are from the family group chat, although my Uncle James gave me some. Family gatherings require a mediator. He advised a family conflict therapist. If everyone sits down and talks honestly, we can resolve this, he writes. The notion bore me despite his good intentions. I appreciate his aid when I phone back. I won't sit with Sophia or Mom. His voice is sad. Although families are hard, he hates seeing them break up. Deny pulling things apart. Finally responding to my mother's lengthy behavior. He pauses before saying, I understand. If I rethink, the invitation stands. His promise is to always back me. I appreciate his effort, but mediation won't work. Mom would victimize herself again. James tells me to take care of myself to stop the call. I swear. A stranger sends me an Instagram message. No profile photo. Random username. What makes me read it after nearly deleting it? Her letter indicates she heard from friends and wants to reconnect. Madeline, my dearest high school buddy, sent it. After graduation, she moved to college across the nation and we lost touch. Even though I haven't thought about her in years, her name conjures up sleepovers and late-night talks. Our lunch is planned after I message her. She chooses a restaurant between our apartments. I enter and she rushes and hugs me. Her looks doesn't affect her laughter. The previous 8 years are eaten and reviewed. Her topics are job, home, and dating. My mom is mentioned. She always believed my mother was mean as a teen. My mother praised Sophia while ignoring me at home, she says. I placed second in school competitions, she says. Mom disappointed I wasn't first like Sophia. Madeline wanted to assist but wasn't. Sure how. My mother terrified her as a child. She regrets timidity. It's possible she did nothing. 3-hour conversation, and phone number exchange. I'll talk this time. Reuniting with her is like rediscovering myself again. 2 days after lunch with Madeline, a new Instagram user approaches me. Texts say Sophia is the victim. She claims I turned the family against her and she never hurt me. Scripture says she followed our mother's example and didn't know what to do. I read them demanding an apology or recognition for her actions. No substance, just excuses and blame. It states she's in treatment and self-improvement. She wants our romance back. Incorrect tone. She sounds like she's reading my want script. Her harm isn't valued. Every interaction is saved in my phone's behavior folder. Account blocking. Another person writes me within an hour with the identical profile photo. I block. Sophia persists, but I'm done. Saturday dinner is at Daniel's parents'. Father arranges a magnificent meal and mother makes pot roast. Daniel's mother wants to chat after dinner. We move to the living room as Daniel and his father clean the kitchen. She grabs my hand on the couch. She calls me her family despite me. She claims I'm her daughter. Praise for my management makes her cry. I established limits and stood up, which inspires her. She knows how hard this is since her mother was difficult. She vows to always include me in their family. Acceptance pinches my throat. I weep. She hugs. Motherly love should feel this. Support without limitations. Pride without comparison. Love without violence. Daniel and his dad watch us weeping. Her father jokes about women and emotions positively. Before leaving, they hug. A calm return. The family exists. Birth family, not my. Lunchtime security contacts me at work. They say my mother wants to meet me in the lobby. My heart races. Promise descent. I take the elevator and notice her weeping in the waiting room. She misbehaves. Entryway people watch her. The woman is in view. She screams that I won't call back, breaking her heart. I retreat when she arrives. My voice is chilly as I order her to go. My friend calls me foolish and wants to discuss. She must depart, or security will. She's surprised by my sincerity. Security asks whether anything's wrong. Mother's face changes. Her face cools after sobbing. She says I'll regret it. She thinks I'm hurting her and will understand when I have kids. She turns toward the door. She yells across the lobby that I'm an unappreciative daughter before leaving. Everyone in the waiting room hears her. Shame warms my face. The security guy apologizes and checks on me. Just nodding, I go upstairs. My hands shook all afternoon, distracted at work. Work was stopped by Mom. She broke another line and it won't last. Seeking therapy in the morning. Miller treats family and harmful connections. Her office opens that afternoon, so I go. With cozy sofas and gentle music, the waiting room is serene. Dr. Miller brings me to her office. She has stunning backward black hair and eyes. She questions my visit. After the engagement meal, I recount my childhood. Listens uninterrupted. After I finish, she nods slowly. She calls my mother narcissistic. She believes some parents need a golden kid and scapegoat to feel in control. I did not cause it, and I cannot solve it, she says. Professional approval calms me. Not insane. Poor sensitivity. Mommy abused me. Miller questions my limits. I ignore my mother's calls and family functions. She approves of some restrictions. She advises my mother escalate before accepting. My mother says she struggles with control loss. Set weekly appointments. Leaving her office improved my behavior. An expert thinks I'm all right. It matters more than thinking. Dan and I are invited to dinner by Olivia on Saturday, 3 days after my last therapy appointment. She expects Andrew, her, and their 2 kids to be alone. No conflict, just family. I agree before overthinking. Daniel takes us to their suburban home on Saturday. My hands tremble entering the driveway. I trust Olivia, but past experiences make me uneasy at the first family meeting since the engagement dinner. Andrew opens the door and hugs us. Teens Chloe and Jake wave from the living room. House smells like chicken and garlic. Olivia hugs me longer after washing her hands in the kitchen. She whispers thanks for coming. Dinner in my house has never felt so natural. Discussing school, job and kids' sports. My mother and Sophia are disregarded. Nobody compares or backhandedly remarks. Olivia holds her dessert wine. As expected in the restaurant, she wants to celebrate my engagement. She thinks Dan is lucky to have me. She says, I deserve someone who sees my worth. Jake and Chloe sip Coke. I blink desperately to stop sobbing as my throat tightens. Family should experience this. During the week, families interact more. Isabella, my second cousin, emails me about her mother in detail. She alleges her mother humiliated her and favored her brother. We chat for 2 hours over coffee. Even if your parents mistreated you, she knows the strange embarrassment of separation. Her experience 5 years ago led her to happiness after leaving relationship mending. Both parties exchange numbers and agree to talk. My dad's uncle texts me support. My old images get heart emoji comments from 2 additional relatives. I'm developing a family that appreciates me, not backup daughter. Like beginning over, but better. It's great my family likes me. The bar was low. Phone rings while preparing breakfast. Caller ID reveals my grandmother's number. Almost not replying, curiosity triumphs. She speaks shortly after I respond. She worries about my mother's health. My mother saw a doctor for stress-related chest pain. She breaks as my granny accuses me for not forgiving. I breathe and speak softly. I'm not accountable for my mother's health. Stop endangering my health. My grandmother gasps like I uttered something terrible. She calls me cruel and says families forgive. I suggest her family respect each other. Screaming, she asks how I got chilly. I learned limitations from her treatment, not coldness. I disconnect before she continues. My hands shake, but I'm pleased I continued. Daniel and I read wedding magazines at our kitchen table. I cried when his parents funded our wedding. List guests. Daniel records family and friends. Olivia, Andrew, Lillian, my father, and others extended real support. The list excludes my mother. Neither does Sophia's. I grant Dan's request. He squeezes my hand and whispers, okay. We count names and choose 40 guests. Dan asks whether I mind. Yes, it feels right. They care about us. Not sad, choosing feels strong. I'm not inviting out of duty or fear. I pick who celebrates with us. My work phone gets email alerts. Forgot to disable Sophia's work email. Unknowingly, I open the, I'm sorry, subject line. She describes her treatment in 3 paragraphs. She recognizes our mother's bias made her rely on being the greatest at everything. She thinks she never learned real relationships because she wanted our mother's approval. She would like to be sisters and friends again. Read twice. The full email discusses her issues. She recounts her pain, treatment, and revelations. For certain actions, she never apologizes. Her smile disappears when mom says I'm not good enough. No one claims she'll flirt with Daniel. Email victimized her, not me. End without reply. I reject her closure because she wants it. Next session, Dr. Miller and I will write my mother. She calls it border letter. It needs few tweaks to be perfect. Note adds, I will not have contact with my mother until she acknowledges the specific harm she caused throughout my life. It lists examples without being cruel. It says I need her to stop blaming me for the consequences of her own actions. It states clearly that I'm not asking for an apology that shifts blame or makes excuses. A page. Dr. Miller nods while reading. Clear and strong without being harsh, she says. Signing follows printing. I mail it certified so my mother can't say she never got it. Cashier requests insurance. I nearly laugh. No insurance covers that product. My mother replies 3 days later, but not in writing. She believes she's a dedicated mother punished for adoring both girls equally on Facebook. She says some kids don't understand parental sacrifices. For unknown reasons, her heart is broken. Without context, 20 likes, 12 comments. Family members who missed the first group chat contact me after viewing the post. They screenshot my mother and Sophia's text. Sending the border letter. 3 relatives said they had no clue things were so awful in an hour. No more excuses for her behavior. After 6 hours, mom deletes Facebook post. Just in case, I screenshotted. Daniel advises leaving work early Friday. I must arrive at 5 without explanation. I'm scared about my 4:30 homecoming. I arrive and notice him dressed beautifully and smiling oddly. We go after he advises I change into something comfy. When queried, he claims our destination is surprising. We arrive at his parents' 20 minutes later. There are several automobiles in the driveway. Daniel opens my door and shows me the backyard. Trees and a food and drink table with string lights. Olivia, Andrew and their kids attend. Lillian exists. Dan's friend Ethan brought his girlfriend. My father sits at the table, uneasy. His mother hugs me when Dan's parents visit. She claims Daniel wanted a family-friendly engagement celebration. All raise glasses as Chloe's father toasts new beginnings. Olivia applauds my womanhood despite everything. Watching me set boundaries and choose myself has been inspiring. Applause and tears. It's my first time getting praise without comparisons. I expect difficulties when my supervisor calls Monday morning. She promotes me to senior analyst. Get promoted and officed. She claims leadership and perseverance. I thank her and work without flying. Starting with Daniel and his parents. Daniel calls and says, "We're celebrating tonight." His mother tears and is proud. At my desk with my phone it hits me. I never considered phoning mom. Telling her positive news is harder. Sadness is unpredictable. My mood improves. Living without her viewpoint hurts less than I imagined. Texting Lillian orders coffee. I accept, and we meet near her office. She commands and sits serious. Sophia alleges she asked Lillian to limit dialogue. Lillian promised Sophia to inquire without pressuring me. Looking at me, she asks, "I may never be ready." That option is accepted by Lillian, nodding. She'll reject Sophia without shaming me. I appreciate that she respected my decision rather than forgiving relatives. My hand gets gripped across the table by Lillian. She supports dissolving familial bonds. 2 weeks later, my dad invites me to coffee. He claims my mother doesn't know he's calling and wants to chat alone. We'll meet alone across town. He seems older at a corner table as I enter. Slouchy shoulders, new eye wrinkles. He stands when he sees me and we awkwardly hug before sitting. I usually say okay when he asks how I'm doing. His coffee is stirred calmly without adding anything. Finally lifting his head, he apologizes. He regrets not protecting me more as a child. He says my mother's rage is draining and he can't ignore it. Fatigued guy says it. He thought saying this was theft. I don't know what to say after waiting my whole life for him to confess. His words dull me, not relieved. Apologizing doesn't help. He's more accountable than I expected, but it doesn't erase my past or years of comparisons and put-downs. I tell him. Avoiding major matters, we speak about minor things for another hour. As we part, I declare I'll date him if he respects my rules. Not talking about my mother or letting him reconcile. He accepts instantly, almost nervously, like he needs permission to date me without her. Our monthly coffee meetups are simple. Although far apart, our relationship is more honest. I felt uncomfortable driving home, like I'd accepted something unnecessary. Next morning, my grandmother messages. Writing her long, formal statement probably took an hour. She warned me about mistreating my mother and prohibited me from family trips. She does not consider a daughter who openly humiliates her mother and refuses to apologize her grandchild. She mentions my holiday prohibitions, including guest list removal. I reread the message expecting pain. But relief floods me. I was excluded from terrible happenings. My mother commended Sophia's thinness and condemned my weight over Thanksgiving. Sophia received jewels and elegant outfits for Christmas mornings while I received socks. Easter brunches with my grandma, who asked why I wasn't married and praised Sophia. I can skip it all now without remorse. I copy and email Daniel the message with the description. I guess we're having our own holidays now. He quickly replies, his parents already invited us to everything and we're going to start our own traditions. I quiet my grandma and eat breakfast feeling lighter than in weeks. Daniel and I research wedding sites next Saturday. 3 attractive but unpleasant sites were visited. Next, we visit a little garden behind an ancient city building. The owner showed us around and I fell in love. Stone paths link rose arbors and flower gardens. An intimate 50-person patio with string lights amid trees. Nice and cozy, however my mother wanted huge settings. He feels Emily holding my 5-month reservation and deposit. Owner expects a beautiful wedding. On the way home, Emily advises bringing only relationship supporters. No obligation invitations or embarrassing relatives. Only those who arrived. Fun replaces stressful wedding planning. Who we want is on our lunch napkin lists. His list includes my dad, Aunt Olivia, Uncle Andrew, Lillian, Madeline, Chloe's relatives. I like all 40 names I'll chose. A mother's friend is in the vegetable department next Tuesday. She smiles as she approaches me before I change aisles. She inquires about my well-being in that gossip-gathering voice. I assure her I'm great, but she stops my cart. My mother is upset over the engagement supper, she adds. She regrets kids not valuing parents. She stares at me like I should apologize or explain. Instead, I look her in the eye and tell her my mother destroyed my heart for 26 years and one poor dinner doesn't compare. She should ask my mother why she said my sister deserves my fiancé more if she's worried about her feelings. She opens her mouth but says nothing. I pass her with my cart without apologizing or comforting her. Shopping makes my hands shake with delight, not guilt. Learning, guilt-free defense. I inform my therapist about the grocery store event and my father's call during my next appointment. Her patience in asking how I feel about losing my mother forever. Perhaps I never needed a mother. She agrees that I'm mourning the relationship I needed, not the one I had. Despite missing my ideal mom, she says the real connection was dreadful. The distinction clarifies things. I waited a lifetime for ideal motherhood, never would. The mother I needed never existed. My trust in her change is fading. Hope slows me. My therapist wonders about not expecting change. Similar to my life. Without her judging my value or happiness. The session feels like I dropped something heavy I didn't realize I was carrying. Weekend, Madeline invites me to her friends. She asked me to supper with friends she likes. I agree. However, I'm terrified to encounter family issue experts. I discover 6 ladies our age in her flat. No one asks about my family or bad things when Madeline introduces me. Work, TV, and travel are discussed during dinner. One woman joked about her lousy work, another about marathon preparation. Their interest in my profession and wedding is genuine. No one vets me or needs evidence. We converse freely, and I realize I've been so secluded by family strife for years that I forgot about friendships. I'm known as me, not as the backup daughter or the girl whose mother hates her. 3 new tunes and 2 for brunch next weekend are my takeaway that night. I text Madeline to thank her and she says she's delighted I came and her friends liked me. Although basic, it helps me live independently from my family. Monday morning brings a large flower arrangement to my office. My coworkers gather as I read the card. The blatant untruth, she forgives me in my mother's handwriting, makes me smile. Like I did something wrong, she pardons me. Like she's better for ignoring my wrongdoing. My coworker asks how I'm doing, and I tell her these flowers are from someone who doesn't forgive. My office is 2 blocks from the nearest nursing home. I offer their activities coordinator a flower during lunch. Excited, she believes others would welcome fresh flowers in the common area. I don't call or SMS mom to say I got them. My response and thank you card are missing. Silent responses are powerful. Daniel asks whether my mother sent anything else that night. I suggest flowers. He shakes his head, amazed she still doesn't understand. I think she knows now. She refuses. Not comprehending is different from my mother's unwillingness to adapt. Daniel's mother calls 2 weeks later to invite us to supper. We find his aunt, uncle, and cousins. His mother requests that they introduce me as their daughter-in-law at a family gathering. She wants everyone to know of their excitement for me. I become furious because the invitation signifies familial acceptance I've always desired but never received. Her attention is appreciated. 3 weeks later, Daniel's extended family excitedly welcomes me to the reunion. Grandma hugged me and said she'd heard good things about me. His cousins want wedding photos and venues. His aunt draws me aside and says she sees how happy I make Daniel, which is all that counts to his family. Nobody asks about my relatives. Daniel likes me and I'm kind, so they accept me. The afternoon was spent laughing and conversing with my supporters. Daniel adds his family thinks I'm great as we depart that night. My family finally wants me. I realize I haven't checked my phone for my mother or Sophia's texts in days in the afternoon at work. Without warning, my months-long monitoring ended. Checking my phone every morning prepared me for manipulation or guilt. Today I check my messages anytime I want without alerts. Telling my therapist that night makes her grin. She adds, "This is what peace feels like, and I should pay attention to how different my life is without their toxicity." I remark it's like breathing better. This reliably eliminates stomach knots. It feels like savoring amazing things without spoiling. My therapist says, "I've done the hard work of setting boundaries, and now I'm experiencing the reward of that work." Peace doesn't promise no issues, just that my predicament ended. As I drive home, I admire my growth and lighter life. Olivia calls 2 weeks later to ask me to dinner. She claims only she, Andrew, and a few family members will always support me. She may develop a family custom that values connections. I want to come, she's excited. Saturday night supper at her house. Found Lillian and 2 more relatives I haven't seen in years. Everyone embraced and complimented me for defying my mother. We eat lasagna and garlic bread without talking about Sophia or my mother unless it supports my boundaries. Olivia raises her glass and offers quarterly meetings. Respectable family. We all agree. And I discovered something superfluous. Family dinners should feel this. Instead of fretting and comparing, laugh. 3 days later, Daniel and I celebrate our first year. At our first date restaurant, he orders the same. He contemplates my modifications over dessert. He liked me more after seeing me stand up for myself at the engagement dinner because of my strength. I told him I worried imposing limits would alienate people but strengthen relationships. I appreciate his help. He grabs my hand across the table and says, "That's exactly what happened." Protecting myself didn't cost me love. It just cleared out the fake love to make room for the real thing. A week later, distant relative Isabella reaches me on Facebook. Since she lives 3 states away, we only see her at major family reunions. After hearing her story through the family grapevine, she wanted to contact my mother. Her family has always prioritized her brother and ignored her. She seeks advice. I address treatment, restrictions, and accepting you can't please everyone. After an hour of talking, she thanks me for being honest about how hard it is. Helping others with my grief is unexpectedly significant. At our next meeting, my therapist grins and adds, "This is part of my healing too." My father calls about coffee days later. Sitting, he looks afraid and fatigued. My boundary letter helped him realize his treatment-induced silence. He claims he normalized my mother's behavior for decades. He admits to not protecting me as a child. I respect his responsibility, but we can't undo the past. Our weekly coffee dates will continue if he doesn't call my mother. He agrees and we discuss our gardens over coffee. Sophia delivers my work address 2 weeks later. Final message almost gets deleted without reading, but curiosity wins. She won't contact me since she knows I don't want a relationship. She wishes me happiness and moves on. No apologies for her actions. I hope it works. After reading twice, I delete without reacting. I'm not responsible for her joy or closure. Her inability to apologize shows her shift. The wedding guest list takes up Sunday afternoon for Dan and me. We reviewed everyone after avoiding it since it appeared complicated. Last list has 42 persons. His family, my father, Olivia, Andrew, Lillian, a few supporting relatives, our close friends, and my therapist, who helped me heal, are invited. Dan finds the list interesting. We or they picked us, not visitors. The list looks right, and I don't feel terrible about missing somebody. I write wedding vows next week. Genuine promises. Building a respectful, loving family, selecting each other daily, and improving ourselves are my topics. As I read them, Daniel cries during rehearsal dinner practice. After I finish, his parents hug me, and his mother says she's honored to be in my new family tale. Father of Chloe says they've always wanted a daughter and are pleased it's me. His family accepts him differently than mine, which surprised me. Chloe's mother contacts me unhappy 3 weeks before the wedding. She says my mother wrote to their house to persuade me to invite her to the wedding. Page after page, the letter describes her suffering and why she should be my mother. Her mother feeds me sentences over the phone, twisting them. We thank her for telling me and decide she'll write back to not influence us. Chloe's mother will reinforce my limits tomorrow. His family defends my choices without my request, which I appreciate. Days later, Lillian offers wedding day motherly duties. She pledges to handle my mother's feared visit. Dan and I discuss it and hire venue security. Wedding security stated unwanted guests are more often than people realize, and will make sure no one crashes who isn't on our list. Being safe allows me enjoy my wedding without worrying about my mother. Later that night, Lillian texts me that she'll always support me, and I believe her. I wake up thrilled the week before the wedding, not nervous. When I get ready for work, I realize I'm unprepared for anything to go wrong or someone to destroy my day. In afternoon therapy, my therapist stated that this happens when you're unprepared for criticism or rejection. She says, "I've done the hard work of removing toxic people from my life, and now I get to experience what peace actually feels like. I'm marrying someone who loves me exactly as I am. I'm surrounded by people who celebrate me instead of tearing me down, and I don't have to perform or prove my worth to anyone." The relief of that realization makes me emotional in the best possible way. Olivia's house smells like vanilla and flowers when I arrive for the bridal shower. The living room is packed with women who have shown up for me, not out of obligation but because they actually want to celebrate. Lillian hugs me at the door and whispers that she helped Olivia plan everything, and I can already feel tears starting. Chloe's mother is here with 2 of his aunts, and they wave from the couch where they're chatting with Madeline. My cousin Isabella from my dad's side brought her daughter, and even my therapist accepted the invitation, which makes me feel seen in a way I never expected. Olivia has set up games and decorations, but what hits me hardest is that nobody here has ever made me feel like I wasn't enough. The shower starts with everyone sharing a story about me, and I brace myself for the usual backhanded compliments, disguised as praise. But Lillian goes first and talks about the time I stood up to a bully in middle school who was picking on a younger kid, and how that moment showed her I had more courage than most adults she knew. Madeline tells everyone about how I helped her through her parents' divorce by just listening without judgment. And Chloe's aunt mentions how Daniel lights up every time he talks about me. Each story reveals qualities I didn't know other people noticed. Strengths my mother never acknowledged because she was too busy comparing me to Sophia. By the time we get to the gift opening, I'm crying happy tears and Olivia hands me tissues while laughing. The gifts are thoughtful and personal things chosen because people actually know who I am. Then Chloe's mother stands up and asks if she can give me something special. She pulls out a delicate silver bracelet with tiny charms, and her voice shakes a little as she explains that it belonged to her own mother. She says she's been waiting for the right person to give it to, someone who would appreciate not just the jewelry, but what it represents. She fastens it around my wrist and tells me it's my something borrowed. But really, it's about welcoming me into their family officially. I lose it completely and hug her while everyone else gets teary too. This is what it feels like to be chosen and valued. To receive love without waiting for the criticism that always followed it in my original family. The shower wraps up with cake and more laughter. And as people leave, each one hugs me and tells me how happy they are for my wedding. Driving home, I keep looking at the bracelet and thinking about how different this celebration was from anything my mother ever hosted for me. 2 days before the wedding, my phone rings while I'm confirming final details with the florist. It's my father and my stomach tightens automatically, even though we've been doing better. He asks if I have a minute to talk and I step outside onto the balcony. He says he's calling to confirm he's still walking me down the aisle, which we already discussed. But then his voice gets quieter. He tells me he knows he can't make up for all the years he stood by while my mother tore me down. But he wants to be part of my future, if I'll let him. He says watching me set boundaries and build a life without my mother's toxicity has made him realize how much damage he allowed by staying silent. I tell him yes, he can walk me down the aisle. And while our relationship will never be what it could have been, I appreciate his effort to do better now. He thanks me and his voice cracks a little, and after we hang up, I sit on the balcony for a while thinking about forgiveness and second chances. I'm not ready to forget everything, but I'm willing to let him try. The morning of the wedding, I wake up feeling calm instead of anxious. Dan already left for his parents' house where he's getting ready with the groomsmen, and Lillian and Madeline arrive at my apartment with coffee and bagels. They help me shower and start on my hair, and the whole process feels easy and fun. We laugh about Lillian's disaster of a first date last month and Madeline's new puppy who keeps eating her shoes. And there's no underlying tension or competition. When it's time to put on my dress, they both help with the tiny buttons down the back. And when I finally look in the mirror, I feel beautiful without needing anyone to tell me I am. The dress fits perfectly and the bracelet from Chloe's mother catches the light. Lillian takes a million photos and Madeline gets emotional, and I realize this is what getting ready for your wedding should feel like. No one is comparing me to anyone else or pointing out flaws or making jokes at my expense. We're just three women celebrating a happy moment, and it feels completely right. The ceremony venue is exactly what Daniel and I wanted. A small garden with flowers everywhere and chairs set up for our 40 guests. I wait in the back room with my father while the music starts and he adjusts his tie nervously. When it's time to walk down the aisle, he offers his arm and we step out into the sunlight. Daniel is standing at the front with the officiant, and the second he sees me, tears start running down his face. My father walks slowly like he's trying to make the moment last, and halfway down the aisle he leans over and whispers that he's proud of me. For once, I believe a family member's compliment without analyzing it for hidden criticism or waiting for the other shoe to drop. When we reach the front, my father hugs me before handing me off to Daniel, and I can see he's crying too. The ceremony itself is simple and perfect. The officiant talks about love and commitment, and then Daniel starts his vows. His voice shakes as he promises to always see my worth, even when I struggle to see it myself. To be my family when my original family failed me, and to spend every day proving that I deserve to be loved exactly as I am. By the time he finishes, half the guests are crying, and I'm barely holding it together. I manage to get through my own vows about building something better together, and when the officiant pronounces us married, Daniel kisses me and everyone applauds. The reception is in the same garden under string lights that make everything glow. We eat and talk and dance, and Andrew stands up to give a toast. He talks about how the strongest families are the ones we choose, not just the ones we're born into, and how watching me set boundaries and build a life on my own terms has inspired other family members to examine their own relationships. He says, "This room full of people who actually love me is more like family than any holiday gathering ever was." And several people nod in agreement. When Dan and I dance to our first song, I realize I'm not thinking about who's missing from the room. I'm not scanning for my mother or Sophia or wondering if they'll show up to ruin things. I'm fully present with the people who showed up, the ones who proved their love through actions instead of just words. My mother's absence doesn't diminish the joy at all. If anything, it protects it, and lets me enjoy the day without bracing for criticism. At the end of the night, Chloe's parents find us by the cake table and pull us both into a hug. His mother says she didn't just gain a daughter-in-law today. She gained a daughter, and the distinction matters more than I can explain. His father says they're proud to call me family, and I thank them for accepting me so completely. I'm building a new family story where I'm valued and celebrated, where my worth isn't dependent on comparison or competition, and my mother's narrative about me being the backup daughter has no power here. Daniel and I say goodbye to the last guests and head to the hotel where we're staying before our flight tomorrow, and I feel lighter than I have in years. On our honeymoon in Hawaii, Daniel and I spend the first few days just relaxing on the beach and not thinking about family drama. But one evening, while we're watching the sunset, we start talking about the future and what kind of parents we want to be someday. Daniel says he wants our kids to feel equally loved and supported. And I agree immediately. We talk about how we'll never compare siblings or play favorites, how we'll celebrate each child's unique strengths instead of ranking them against each other. I tell him our children will never wonder which one is loved more and will break the cycle of favoritism and comparison that my mother created. Turning my pain into a promise to do better feels like the ultimate victory over my mother's legacy. Like I'm taking all that hurt and transforming it into something protective and healing for the next generation. Somewhere during the honeymoon, I realize I've stopped defining myself in relation to Sophia or my mother. When I think about who I am, I don't automatically compare myself to my sister or measure my worth by my mother's standards. I'm not the backup daughter anymore. I'm just myself, and that's enough. The voice in my head that used to sound like my mother's criticism has gotten quieter, replaced by my own voice telling me I'm worthy exactly as I am. I look at Daniel sleeping beside me one morning and think about the life we're building together, And I feel grateful for every hard decision that led me here. Setting boundaries hurt and cost me relationships, but it also freed me to become someone I actually like. 3 months pass after the wedding and I'm sitting at a coffee shop when my phone rings with my father's number. I answer and hear his voice quieter than usual, telling me he needs to talk. He says he's moved into a hotel temporarily and separated from my mother. The words hang in the air between us for a moment before he explains that watching me build a life without her toxicity made him realize how much her behavior affected his own happiness. He sounds tired, but also relieved, like he's been carrying something heavy for years and finally set it down. I tell him I'm not going to pressure him about what he decides to do long term, but I'm glad he's taking care of himself. We talk for another 20 minutes about nothing important. Just normal conversation without the weight of my mother's presence influencing every word. When we hang up, I sit with my coffee and realize this is what happens when you stop accepting cruelty as normal. Other people start to notice it too. The following week, I have my regular therapy appointment, and my therapist reviews the progress I've made over the past several months. She suggests we move to monthly sessions instead of weekly because I've built such a strong foundation of self-worth. She reminds me that healing isn't a straight line, and I'll probably still have hard days, but the work I've done means my mother's voice in my head doesn't control me anymore. I can hear criticism without believing I deserve it. I can set boundaries without drowning in guilt. I can accept love without waiting for the conditions that come after it. I leave her office and walk to my car, feeling proud of how far I've come from the woman who used to apologize for existing. November arrives and Daniel and I decide to host our first holiday dinner in our apartment. We invite his parents, my father, Olivia, Andrew, Lillian, Madeline, and Ethan. I spend the morning cooking while Dan sets the table, and when everyone arrives, the apartment fills with voices and laughter that feels genuine. Nobody makes comparisons between me and anyone else. Nobody gives compliments with hidden insults attached. Olivia brings a pie and hugs me in the kitchen, telling me how happy she is to see me thriving. My father sits on the couch talking to Chloe's dad about golf, and the conversation is easy and comfortable. Ethan tells a story about Dan's college years that makes everyone laugh, and Madeline helps me carry dishes to the table. We eat and talk, and someone suggests a game after dinner, and the whole evening feels warm and safe. This is what family is supposed to feel like. People who show up because they want to, not because they have to. People who celebrate you instead of tolerate you. I look around the table at faces that chose to be here and realize I finally have what I always wanted. A year passes since the engagement dinner that changed everything. I wake up next to Daniel in the apartment we share and think about how different my life looks now. I have a husband who loves me without conditions or comparisons. I have in-laws who treat me like their actual daughter instead of someone they're stuck with. I have a chosen family of relatives and friends who celebrate my wins and support me through hard days. But most importantly, I have my own approval. I don't need my mother to validate my worth anymore because I know it myself. Her opinion used to define everything about how I saw myself, but now it's just noise I don't have to listen to. The freedom that comes from that realization is worth every uncomfortable conversation, every boundary I had to set, every relationship I had to let go of to protect my peace. I'm not the backup daughter anymore. I'm just me. And that's enough. For 12 years my family ignored me, then Mom demanded I donate both my kidneys to my brother. When I refused, she accused me of trying to kill him. My mother thought I was selfish for not giving Ethan both kidneys. In my living room she cried phony tears and said I killed him for retaining undeserved organs. You have 2 healthy kidneys, Ethan none. You might save him without harshness now. Daily vodka use for 12 years ruined Ethan's kidneys. Started at 18. Never stopped. His mother purchased his first bottle. Boys should practice liquor handling, he suggested. Mom thought physicians were exaggerating when they revealed his kidneys were failing at 28. She accused physicians of neglecting him when he required his first dialysis at 33. 2 kidneys died at 35. He required a transplant or died in a year. Unsuitable kidney from Mom. Dad had poor ones. I had great ones. I said 1 kidney when she asked. Give him 1. 1 isn't enough, she said. His physique is feeble. He needs both to succeed. Permanent dialysis required. I'm 30. For 45 years machines have kept me alive. You're stronger than Ethan. You're capable. Her parenthood was amazing. His mother raised Ethan as her golden boy. He acquired an automobile at 18. I received nothing. Paid, he quit college. I had student loans. 3 jail releases. I was evicted at 20 for pregnancy. That pregnancy failed. Mom felt my carelessness warranted it. I became a nurse anyhow. Paid for school with 3 jobs. I became independent from a family that disregarded me until needed. Mom never called for 12 years. Neither did Ethan. I learned about family events on Facebook. Not invited to Ethan's wedding, Mom's 55th birthday, or Dad's retirement party. Now they need my organs. I rejoined family. Refusal caused harassment. Mom phoned work about mental collapse. So I informed my landlord I was unstable. I told my partner I would murder my brother. In my shift, she visited my hospital. Everyone, look at the nurse who won't save her brother. She won't split kidneys. Security escorted her out, but she returned the next day. She texted, phoned, and visited me for 2 weeks. You murder Ethan. You're selfish. What sister loses brother? Is she unaware Ethan won't die? Not really. He had dialysis 3 times a week. Tolerable, not nice. That might last decades. I knew from dialysis. For 25 years, 70-year-olds have used machines. Ethan craved peace. Neither did Mom. Restoring her ideal baby without machines was her goal. She bound me to gear. I phoned Ethan immediately. I talked to him 4 years ago. Do you know Mom needs both kidneys? I requested. Yes, he said. Dialysis would last forever. You understand? You're young. Your adaptability would increase. Free of kids. I may, not you. Tried and failed. He said. Said my miscarriage disqualified me for organs. I quit. I informed Ethan's transplant team about Mom's texts requesting both kidneys. Lead surgeon's face darkened. She wants both contributions. Illegal. We'd never agree. Mom told Ethan the team would do it if I consented. Complete falsehood. The surgeon immediately called Mom and Ethan. For Emma to talk, I put the phone on speaker. Mom shouted at Emma for intruding in family business. Emma calmly explained that federal law barred living kidney donors from giving both kidneys since they would need dialysis forever. Mom yelled, thinking Emma lied to shield the hospital from a lawsuit. Mom said Emma was purchased by insurance firms, but Emma seemed professional. Emma relayed the facts carefully, seeming bewildered rather than outraged. Live donors can donate 1 kidney. The law is federal. Transplant doctors denied my double donation request. Mama cried. She cried phony tears for anything. Under the act, I heard terror. A obstinate doctor ruined her plan. Emma gently clarified that Ethan didn't need both kidneys. A healthy living donor kidney suffices. The mom was misled about medical needs. Mom wept more and hung up before Emma finished. Emma apologized across her desk for my mother's behavior. She stated the transplant team wanted to document everything in case my relatives pressured me again. People couldn't discuss contribution with me without the team since they marked my file. Emma filled out forms and took notes as I napped. Mom made me feel awful for 2 weeks for declining. She convinced Ethan I killed him intentionally. I was selfish and unpleasant, she told Dad and half the family. However, a 25-year-old doctor stated Mom's request was unlawful. I wasn't insane. I wasn't rude. Refusing a surgery no U.S. hospital would accept. Driving home with steady hands was the first time in weeks. I felt lighter with expert approval. Out of mind. I had Chinese food on the couch table for Daniel. He stood up when I entered and I informed him about Emma and the call. I started weeping as he gripped me too tightly to breathe. No sobs, just stress relief. Daniel embraced me as I wept into his shoulder and splattered tears on his shirt without saying. After I calmed down, we ate Chinese and he held my hand. My phone exploded at 11 o'clock that night. Mom texts harder after messages. She said I lied and incited physicians to detest her. Poisoned them against Ethan with lies. I was accused of wishing my sibling dead to impress my parents. I threatened disclosure. Sometimes 3 or 4 messages alternated fury and guilt. Ethan sobbed for me, she added. My daughter let Dad down. I regretted this when Ethan died and was responsible. Daniel screenshotted all my phone texts. In my laptop's harassment documentation folder he put each screenshot's date and time. Shaking hands I watched him work. Mom's opinions were more accurate after seeing the grid. Daniel highlighted that her actions justified my refusal. A kind mother wouldn't let one child jeopardize her health for another. Loving moms wouldn't say this. After arriving early, Sophie summoned me into her office before my shift. The door closed and she informed me hospital security reported my mother tried to enter the dialysis unit around 9 o'clock yesterday night. Mom requested the security guard teach staff medical ethics and family loyalty. The guard blocked her from entering the lobby because she was familiar. Mom left after 20 minutes of fighting. I felt bad when Sophie gave me her computer security report. Sophie stated the facility values personnel safety. My mother's arrival was detected by security. How was I and did I require schedule changes? I nearly sobbed again when someone was gracious about this disaster. Sophie advised me to ask for help and that the employee support program provided free care. I began my dialysis shift after thanking her. Working with my usual patients seemed like nothing else. While his machine rang, Mr. Klein showed me images of his little granddaughter on his phone. Mother Brennan hosted Thanksgiving despite criticizing her daughter-in-law's cooking. James discussed his fishing vacation next month. Their dialysis lasted 25 to 30 years. They planned, had families, and moaned about life. Ethan wasn't executed as Mom said. Dialysis 3 times a week was excessive. Lunch was interrupted by an unknown caller. Something prompted me. "This me?" asked woman. When I agreed, she introduced herself as Mom's sister Veronica. I hadn't spoken to Veronica since my expulsion 8 years earlier. She asked my advice after Mom told her about kidney condition. She seemed scared, not accusing, prompting a dialogue. I told Veronica everything in my hospital parking lot vehicle. Mom wanted both kidneys 3 weeks ago. Domestic and workplace harassment. The surgeon denied Mom's assertions that transplant workers authorized duplicate contributions. Veronica listened quietly. I heard her breathing long after finishing. Mom lying about physicians' advice wasn't surprising, she claimed. I was shocked when a relative mentioned that. At 18, Veronica's mother encouraged Ethan's drinking. Her mother purchased his first bottle. At family occasions, Mom laughed off Ethan's drinking. No one could tell Mom about Ethan, even though she knew it would end poorly. When Veronica whispered, my chest tightened. My mom made communication tough, so the family rejected me. Mom would get mad if somebody mentioned or invited me, ruining the celebration. People stopped asking since getting along with Mom was simpler than her struggle. Veronica spoke softly, regretting it for peace. Sitting apart, we spoke for over an hour. Veronica remembered Mom controlling guest lists and talks at family occasions I skipped. She added numerous family members were unhappy with Mom's nagging, demanding demands, and conduct but didn't say anything. Mom isolated or hurt opponents until they died. Veronica offered to speak to suspicious relatives. Before we hung up, she stated Mom was wrong and I was right to defend myself. When relatives, not Daniel or co-workers, uttered similar things, I felt something. My first family approval in 12 years. Daniel and I were cooking dinner when the front desk phoned. Our doorman claimed my mother requested lobby access. I became queasy and turned away guests. She was asked to leave. Mom's background voice grew, regarding maternal rights and seeing her daughter. The competent doorman urged her to go since the house didn't want guests. Mom shouted over the phone. Her scream said the building staff was preventing her from helping me kill Ethan. Daniel snatched the phone from my shaky fingers and recommended we contact the police non-emergency number to document matters. I was scared when Daniel initially called the police on my mother. Dispatcher was informed of the situation, given the address, and ordered to record harassment. Mom was gone when cops arrived an hour later. He took notes in our living room as I explained the pattern, workplace stalking, landlord and boyfriend calls, and tonight's building event. He was tired at 40. Nodding, he wrote everything on this tiny notepad. He said, "This kind of behavior often escalates," and offered a restraining order. He made it look simple and protocol-based. Daniel and I investigated restraining orders on his laptop that night after the police left. After reviewing court documents and guidelines, we listed every 4-week occurrence. Daniel's spreadsheet now includes dates, times, places, Mom's words and actions, hospital events, texts, calls to my job and landlord, and tonight's lobby incident. Seeing violence after abuse helped me comprehend. This wasn't intricate family drama, despite my claims. Consent was often denied and intimidation used. The officer's calmness helped me understand. Not dramatic, he said. He handled it honestly. Civilly liable harassment. I left the parking garage job 4 days later. Mom was behind my vehicle. She looked awful. She had dirty hair, crumpled clothing, and heavy eye bags from days of sleeplessness. I debated turning back and seeking security 20 feet away with my keys. Mom spoke quickly when she saw me. This feverish rant about Ethan being her child and how she couldn't lose him. She stated she understood my past anger, but Ethan shouldn't suffer for family concerns. True tears and a broken voice. I awoke and whispered Ethan wouldn't die. Dialysis 3 times a week may last decades. Patients on my unit did it frequently. Mum screamed I was terrible for comparing her son to others. She yelled that dialysis was horrible and that I was damning Ethan to a terrible life when I could save him with one action. The concrete garage walls imitated her speech. Ethan declined my kidney offer. She requested dialysis for me, not Ethan. Mom nodded agreement. True sister would. Give her everything. Her brother deserved nothing. Ethan was harmed, she alleged. I didn't understand addiction and prioritized my health, therefore his drinking wasn't his fault. Security guard Luke turned. Being focused on us, someone must have reported the yelling. Mom was immediately identified from hospital notice. She was named and instructed to leave the hospital immediately. Luke interrupted Mom's conversation with her daughter. He threatened to call the police if she stayed hospitalized. His voice showed he wasn't haggling and was stern but not harsh. Mom left the garage after staring at me like I betrayed her. Followed me to my car and watched me lock the doors after she left. He inquired whether I was okay and urged me to notify security if I saw her in the hospital again. I sat in my car shaking the steering wheel after thanking him. Mom turned toward the garage exit, shoes clicking on pavement. She backed up 10 feet and turned, furious. She cried, "You'll regret this when Ethan dies, and it's all your fault," echoing through the walls. "When he's gone, you'll have to live with knowing you could have saved him, but chose yourself instead." Luke left. He obstructed her view of me. He remained silent till Mom left. Her car began on the bottom level, fading engine noises as she drove away. Luke walked me to my car and waited. "Try rearranging your schedule," he said. "Come and go at different times, use different entrances, that kind of thing." I thanked him and closed my doors, then realized this was an embarrassing family drama. Security worried about my safety at the hospital. Because security experts felt my mother was a threat, I drove home on autopilot with my hands on the wheel. Daniel was cooking supper when I arrived to my flat and inquired what occurred. I told him about Mom in the parking garage and Luke's schedule adjustment idea. "I found a lawyer," Daniel said, bringing out his phone. "I called Mark Sullivan this afternoon after you texted about your mom returning. I was glad to be no longer alone." Daniel called lawyers and researched as I worked. Seeing Mark's restraining order and family court website, I called right immediately as Daniel made dinner. Mark answered on the third ring with a kind, professional voice, and I explained Mom seeking both kidneys, job harassment, and tonight's parking garage incident. After patiently listening, he invited me to meet tomorrow afternoon and asked me to bring my documents, Mom's texts, hospital incident reports, and the police record from her visit to my building. Bring anything that shows a pattern of behavior. I drove to Mark's downtown office early the next day after work to see his modest but neat waiting area with office furniture and periodicals on the coffee table. After a secretary checked me in, Mark emerged 10 minutes later, shook my hand, and led me back to his office in a suit without a tie, maybe 50. Sitting across from his workstation, I pulled out the folder Daniel and I had made, which contained screenshots of Mom's messages grouped by date, hospital security records from each visit, my apartment building's police report, and the transplant surgeon's statement about the illegal double kidney request. Mark lay everything out on his desk and wrote notes on a yellow legal pad as I described Mom's original demand to last night in the parking garage, asking about witnesses, dates, and Mom's physical violence. After talking, Mark sat back and glanced at his desk documents, saying, "You have an excellent case for a restraining order. The pattern is clear. Numerous witnesses and documented workplace disruption." Mark explained the process. I felt better when a lawyer indicated my case was strong. Legal authorities would take it seriously. 4 weeks after we petitioned, the court scheduled a restraining order hearing. I'd testify and provide proof concerning Mom's activities during the hearing. He'd help me prepare court testimony. "Given what you've shown me, I'm confident the judge will grant the order," said. "You have hospital security involved, police reports, workplace complaints, and a clear pattern of escalating behavior." Mark's assurance calmed me. I wasn't mean or theatrical, I was protecting myself from a boundary breaker. We scheduled a hearing preparation meeting next week. While making leftovers that night, I answered an unknown phone. "Hello?" Dad's tired, scratchy voice said. "It's me." After Mom booted me out 12 years ago, Dad contacted me to say, Mom told me what transpired in the hospital. I know she's been out of line, but please reconsider. I closed the microwave and placed my hand on the counter for Ethan. Where were you when Mom expelled me at 20, when I miscarried alone, when I worked 3 jobs to graduate nursing school? The connection was quiet, but I could hear Dad breathing and visualize him at my boyhood home. I know I should have spoken up for you back then, said. Why not forget the past when Ethan's life is at stake? Dad, Ethan is safe. He gets dialysis 3 times a week. Many patients at my hospital do it. Dad looked bewildered. Your mother stated the transplant experts advised her both kidneys would offer Ethan the best chance. 1 kidney may not be enough. After the transplant surgeon phoned to say double kidney donation is unlawful and impossible, I told Mom she lied. Despite my efforts, the hospital refused. Dad grew quieter. She said the doctor said that. He hesitated. Mom lied to you, Dad. She showed me paperwork and everything. She misled Ethan. Dad didn't say anything for nearly a minute, but I heard him stirring, maybe rising or pacing. I don't understand all the medical stuff, so I just trusted your mother to handle the technicalities. I knew Mom was manipulating everyone. Ethan thought the transplant team had authorized removing both my kidneys if I consented. Dad felt the doctors advised it for Ethan's best chance. The whole family undoubtedly accepted Mom's version, where I was the greedy villain refusing to rescue my dying brother. Everyone believed her because nobody imagined she'd lie about something so important. Ethan isn't dying, I said. Dialysis is unpleasant but effective. You could live normally on it. Just 1 kidney transplant is needed. Only living donors offer that. Mom lied about requiring both. I explained how the transplant procedure works and how 1 healthy kidney from a living donor is typically better than 2 from a deceased donor because it's fresher. I told him about my patients who'd been on dialysis since the 1990s and had careers, families and full. Dad listened without interrupting, collecting data that contradicted Mom's claims. His voice sounded older than I recalled, worn down by years of letting Mom make all the choices. I need to figure out what's true. Dad listened to the facts and said he needed to think about it, not scolded or embarrassed me. 1 phone conversation didn't erase 12 years of quiet, but maybe Dad was finally seeing through Mom's deception. Or maybe he'd decide it was simpler to believe her story, and I'd never hear from him again. After Catalina suggested family stress therapist Michaela Fields, I took the elevator to the hospital's staff support program on the 3rd floor the next week. Catalina told me Michaela knew tough family circumstances and wouldn't push reconciliation, as I completed out intake papers regarding my family history and present pressures in the quiet waiting area with comfortable seats and serene colors. Michaela, younger than I expected, maybe 40, came out to receive me in ordinary clothes. Her handshake was warm, and she smiled like she was delighted to meet me. Her office had a couch, 2 chairs, windows facing the parking lot, and a psychology and fiction bookshelf. Catalina told me a little about your circumstances, Michaela said, holding a notepad. Why are you here? I got carried away talking. Mom's kidney request, Ethan's entitlement, the 12-year agreement, the harassment campaign, and last week's parking garage situation all unfolded. Michaela said, It sounds like your mother has never seen you as a separate person with your own needs and rights. Rather than fixing or advising me. It felt like you've always existed in her mind as either an extension of her or a resource for your brother. I thought about that sentence all week, working and sleeping. Michaela urged me to recollect other examples of this trend. I saw it wherever I looked. My mom had me take piano lessons for 3 more years even though I hated them at 12. She liked telling people my daughter played. I wanted to attend community college near home, but she pushed me toward expensive universities so she could brag about my acceptance and refused to help pay for my tuition. After I became pregnant at 20, she kicked me out since having a teenage daughter didn't fit her image. Michaela revealed Mom's kidney requirement matched. She wanted Ethan well again and wanted to utilize my body without my consent. I didn't realize removing both kidneys would kill me because my needs hadn't registered. Anything else was selfish self-revolution for her convenience. Understanding the pattern didn't ease the suffering, but it made rejection less weird. Mom, I wasn't rude. Michaela inquired about the miscarriage at my second therapy appointment the next week, something I hadn't discussed in years. Daniel knew, but I didn't explain. I got pregnant at 20 while living at home, working part-time at a grocery store, and planning college. Mom was furious, screaming that I was squandering my life, hurting her name, and that everyone would think she raised me poorly. Mom said to pack and go 3 days later. She didn't care where or how I managed. Additional shifts let me pay a friend's basement rent. I cramped at work at 12 weeks. My emergency room doctor told me I needed surgery to miscarry after bleeding heavily. Without someone to call, I did everything alone. I told my mom 4 days later, and she thought it was excellent since I wasn't responsible enough to be a mother. After the defeat, she said my body judged my character for not being ready. I didn't hear from her for 12 years. After informing Michaela, I realized my embarrassment was never mine. I blamed myself for becoming pregnant, worrying out, and miscarrying. I was 20, alone, and scared, abandoned by everyone who should have helped me. My loss and mom's abuse weren't my fault. They failed me, so I bore their shame for a decade. This was my first night of sleep in weeks following therapy. Daniel immediately saw I was calmer and didn't react to phone alarms. At his home meal, he discussed it. He said he wanted a real future with me. He wanted to offer me to move in before the renal crisis, but he didn't want me to think he was helping. He wanted me to know he didn't fear my family's issues. He witnessed the worst. He picked me despite mom's nagging and Ethan's animosity. We spent hours discussing our ambitions that night. He desired marriage, kids, and a life without my upbringing's turmoil. I had similar goals but was scared to aspire over 20. Daniel clasped my hand across the table and said I deserved good things and loyal customers. I cried with relief, not anguish, for the first time in months and felt better. The late October restraining order hearing was on a cold Tuesday morning. My hands trembled as I held our binder of paperwork when Mark met me outside the courthouse at 8:30. He told me the court would hear all sides and to stay calm and factual no matter what Mom or her lawyer said. The right courtroom was third floor after security. Mom and her lawyer, an older man in a suit, spoke softly on a hallway bench with his head near to her. She looked compassionate in a nice dress, little makeup, and well-styled hair. Mom's face contorted in misery when she saw me, like I hurt her. I gazed at Mark's serenity. He gripped my shoulder and told me we had facts, but Mom looked so regular and maternal that I worried the court would see her acting instead of the truth. I thought my statistics would reveal a vicious daughter fabricating family strife instead than a harassment victim defending herself. With wooden seats and a judge's platform, the courtroom was smaller than expected. Mom, Mark, and her lawyer sat at different tables. The mid-50s judge with gray hair and a no-nonsense approach quickly reviewed the paperwork and invited me to testify. I stood shakily and vowed to be honest. My testimony was thoughtfully questioned by Mark. Mom hounded me for refusing both kidneys despite medical impossibility. I described Mom appearing to the hospital during my shifts, her lobby drama, security ordering her out twice, and she sitting outside my car in the parking garage refusing to go when asked, with the security man interfering. Mark showed screenshots of text messages, call records showing frequency, hospital security statements proving trespassing, and Mom's apartment building police complaint. A pattern made the judge uneasy. The court stiffened when Mark presented the transplant surgeon's evidence that double kidney donation was illegal and that Mom had lied about the medical team's willingness. My mother's lawyer stepped up to cross-examine me gently. He stated I was exaggerating family turmoil into harassment, that my mother was desperate to save her child, and that I was punishing her for past issues. I'd been estranged from my family for 12 years since my mother kicked me out at 20 and never tried to reconnect. I attended family events without invitation. We mostly clashed about her treatment of me and my brother. Mark stood up for redirect and asked me one simple question while the lawyer tried to make me look like the troubled daughter who created family turmoil. Did I offer my brother one kidney, the legal and medically appropriate option? Mark asked my mother's reaction. I said I needed both kidneys and go on dialysis myself. The judge looked at me like he meant it. Then he asked if she knew it was illegal and would put me on dialysis forever. The judge interrupted Mom's lawyer and repeated the question, her voice sharp. Mom shifted in her seat, her composure cracking. She said the doctors were wrong, that she'd only been exploring all options to save her son, and that any mother would do the same. She never meant to hurt me. She just wanted Ethan to have the. The judge asked whether Mom knew bugging me at work may cost me my job. Mom said she was just trying to make me realize how serious the matter was. The judge then asked if entering my residence after being told to stay away was acceptable. Mom flushed and cried, but they were panic tears as she realized her manipulation wasn't working on someone with authority. The judge granted a 1-year restraining order barring Mom from contacting me directly or through third parties, visiting my workplace or home, or posting about me on social. She warned of swift arrest and jail time, and Mom's face crumpled and she wept harder, holding her lawyer's arm like she needed physical support. Her lawyer advocated a lighter sentence or fewer restrictions, but the judge was unmoved. She stated the recorded harassment was serious and persistent, that I had a right to feel secure at work and home, and that Mom's actions had violated legal bounds regardless of her reasons. The gavel cracked, and Mom couldn't contact me without criminal repercussions. Mark said it was perfect, and Daniel hugged me outside, telling me I did great, and it was completed. It was important, but holding the restraining order paperwork on the courtroom steps made me feel heavy, sorrowful, and like something permanent had broken. Daniel took me to a fancy downtown restaurant with good wine and low lighting to celebrate, telling me how brave I was and how proud he was of protecting myself. The restraining order confirmed that my mother would never change, apologize, or see me as a person. I was exhausted after the hearing. I picked up my food and drank my wine and tried to feel good about having legal protection, but I couldn't. Daniel noticed and stopped pushing. He reached across the table and held my hand, telling me it was okay to not be okay and that I didn't have to pretend everything was fine just because I won in. He knew that guarding yourself from family feels like loss. We finished dinner silently and walked back to his apartment, where I fell asleep on his couch before 9 without going to bed. 4 days after the judicial hearing, Veronica called as I was getting ready for work. After asking for the medical papers, she told me Dad confronted Mom about the falsehoods with a strained but resolute voice. The transplant team never indicated both kidneys would offer Ethan a greater chance, and the physicians never said one wouldn't be enough. After learning the truth, Dad was furious, and Veronica said they had their biggest fight ever. He packed a suitcase and came to Veronica's house that night to stay in her guest room while he resolved things. Veronica said she'd never seen him so angry or dejected. He was seeing 30 years of marriage clearly for the first time and despised it. She told me other family members had been calling her wondering what happened because Mom's narrative kept changing and nothing made sense. My cousin wanted to know why I was thrown out at 20. I felt strange buttoning my scrubs as Veronica said Mom's long-held story was crumbling and family members were reaching out to uncover the truth. That afternoon between appointments, my cousin Olivia, who had spent summers with me before the family split, sent me a long, awkward Facebook post apologizing for believing Mom's statements about me being unstable and greedy. She apologized for not reaching out sooner and suggested we meet for coffee. No pressure. She understood if I said no. I pondered at the message for a while before responding. Yes, I'd appreciate that. The next morning, Catalina summoned me into her office before rounds. I worried one of my patients had a problem, but she grinned and said the hospital management wanted to recognize my approach to Mom. Catalina wrote a letter explaining how I'd never let the harassment affect my work and how I'd continued providing excellent care even when Mom was at the hospital causing scenes. The board would put the commendation in my personnel file and give me a small bonus for maintaining patient care standards during a difficult personal time. Anxious, I arrived early for the coffee meeting with Olivia on my day off and watched people pass by the window. Being praised for surviving my mother's pestering felt strange and gratifying. Olivia looked older than the Facebook photos and tired, like life had worn her down. We hugged awkwardly, ordered drinks, and sat across from each other, unsure how to start. Olivia apologized again for the years of exclusion, saying she'd always questioned Mom's version but went along rather than make. Olivia asked about me during family functions I wasn't invited to, but Mom became irate and Dad diverted the subject. She stopped asking because she felt bad about choosing comfort over doing the right thing. We spoke for 2 hours, which was beautiful yet heartbreaking. Olivia left after telling me Ethan was angry about the restraining order and blamed me for tearing the family apart, calling me ugly and harsh. Olivia said Dad was still going to dialysis 3 times a week and ranting about his unjust existence. Dad wrote on Facebook about selfish siblings who abandoned needy family and subtweeted about me, even though he couldn't name me. He was healthy, stable, and not in danger, but he was upset that his little sister wouldn't assist him. Olivia was honest and told me the transplant team was searching the National Donor Registry. Olivia confirmed what I already knew from transplantation, but it made it truer. Ethan would get his kidney, but not from me. Michaela and I explored my complex ideas about protecting myself while watching family relationships break apart that week in therapy. I told her about Dad staying with Veronica, Olivia reaching out, and my strange mix of relief and guilt. Michaela taught me that I wasn't responsible for resolving problems I didn't cause, that Mom's lies and manipulation had been ruining the family before I established boundaries, and that some relationships are too broken to repair. Michaela said it's normal to feel bad about the restraining order, But it doesn't mean I made the wrong choice. It just shows I'm human, and family relationships are hard, especially poisonous ones. Mark phoned 4 weeks after the courthouse hearing to say Dad had contacted out and asked if I'd meet with him alone. No Mom, no Ethan. Mark said I didn't have to agree to anything, but he recommended a public spot and reminded me I could leave if I felt frightened. I told Mark I'd meet Dad in a downtown coffee shop Saturday morning, neutral ground where we had no history. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat at a corner table with a door view. Despite the warm coffee, my stomach and hands were chilly. Dad came on time, looking older than I recalled. His hair was grayer, his face more wrinkled, and his shoulders stooped like he was carrying a weight. He noticed me and sat across from me without hugging or touching me. We gazed at each other for a long time before he started. He apologized for the decade of silence, not reaching out after I got kicked out, not being there when I miscarried, and missing 12 years of my life because it was easier. He said he chose peace over justice and was ashamed of that. He also admitted he believed Mom's kidney lies because he didn't understand medical stuff and trusted her to handle the details. I couldn't tell him everything was okay or that I'd forgiven him, so I watched him look at his coffee cup trying to find answers. The apology hurt more than if it had been phony since it meant he knew what he did and chose it nonetheless for 12 years. I inhaled and told him that words were simple, and he had a decade to reach out before Ethan needed a kidney. He shook but nodded and kept his eyes down. I promised to rebuild something if he wanted change. Not guilty, but devoted to being different, we could meet once a month for coffee and see if trust would return. He looked up, relieved, and accepted immediately. We decided the third Saturday of each month, same coffee shop, same hour, a realistic and safe framework. Daniel and I sat on my couch, his laptop screen lighting up his face as he clicked through vacant room photos. We'd been discussing moving in together for weeks, but tonight it looked real and feasible. He showed me a 2-bedroom with big windows, and I leaned against his shoulder, feeling his solid warmth and thinking about how different this was from my family. With Daniel, I got to choose and build something new instead of fixing something broken. I said, "Yes, let's go look at it this weekend." Daniel saved the listing and kissed my head, giving me hope. I couldn't explain why we needed a house together. At my next therapy session 4 days later, I told Michaela about Dad's apology and our monthly coffee plan. She listened with her usual focus, then noted how much had changed in 2 months since I first called the transplant team. I'd set boundaries with the restraining order, started rebuilding Mom, gotten relationships with Dad and other family members, and now I was planning legal protection. Through. Michaela said I'd gone from terrified and protective to someone who defended herself while being open to healthy relationships. I wasn't conscious of the changes since I was too busy surviving each day, but sitting in her office with the afternoon light shining through the curtains, I realized 2 months earlier, I was terrified and alone. Now Daniel, Mark, Catalina, and even Dad were trying to help me. Not everything was fixed, it probably never would be. But I wasn't drowning anymore. The following week, Veronica invited me to a small family dinner at her house. Dad, my cousin, and a few other relatives wanted to reconnect with. Veronica said Mom and Ethan wouldn't be there and I could leave any time if it felt wrong. I almost said no because family gatherings had been painful for so long, but her voice made me think this could be different. I agreed and she sounded happy, telling me to come Saturday at 6 and bring nothing but myself. On Saturday the home smelled like roasted chicken and garlic and Veronica hugged me like she hadn't seen me in years. Dad was uncomfortable in the living room, and my cousin hugged me. After Veronica served supper and everyone started talking, the 6 of us, relatives I hardly recognized but who remembered me, relaxed. My aunt shared a tale about a Christmas when I was 12 and Mom insisted me sit at the kids' table while Ethan sat with the adults despite being 4 years apart. I heard from people that Mom treated me unfairly. My cousin said she saw Mom give Ethan college money and told me to sort it out myself. She felt bad, but didn't know what to say. Mom often stated that others saw the unfairness and brutality and looked away because it was easier. Each story impacted me hard, proving I wasn't dreaming it or being oversensitive. Though I wanted to be angry at them for their silence, for all the years, they could have said something. I felt sad for the young me who struggled to be good enough while everyone watched and said nothing. I thanked them for their honesty, but it was too late. My cousin casually said that Ethan had been matched with a dead donor and was scheduled for transplant surgery in 4 weeks at the end of supper. I felt glad, and something other since he'd have the kidney he required without risking my health or future. Relief that this would resolve the months-long crisis. but also a hollow sensation that our relationship was destroyed and that even receiving what he wanted wouldn't change how he treated me. I told my cousin I hoped the transplant went well because I didn't want Ethan to die or suffer. Dad clasped my hand under the table, a modest gesture that meant a lot. The next week at work, Catalina called me into her office and told me the hospital was establishing new family harassment regulations for staff. My case exposed gaps in the hospital's protection processes, which they were fixing. The hospital now has clearer rules about family members, faster complaint response systems, and mandatory recording of threatening relatives. I sat there thinking about how mom's misdeeds may assist another nurse from having their mother pursue them at work. Catalina stated my experience would help safeguard other healthcare workers in similar situations. 4 weeks later, Veronica called to say Ethan's transplant went well that morning. I was glad the surgery went well because I didn't want my brother to die. The replacement kidney was filtering his blood nicely, and the doctor expected he'd be off dialysis in a few months. Transplant patients need lifetime anti-rejection medication. After the medical catastrophe, we both realized some relationships were too fractured to heal. Veronica claimed Ethan was already whining about the hospital food and the uncomfortable bed, which sounded like him. Dad called me that evening to say he'd visited Ethan at the hospital, but Mom had been there too, so he'd kept the visit short. Even though Mom kept calling to come home, he said Veronica's house was giving him space to think clearly for the first time in years. Even though it was hard and lonely, he recognized he'd spent too much time managing Mom's emotions and supporting her worst behaviors and couldn't go back. I told him I was proud of him for holding his boundary, and he became silent and said that meant more than I probably knew. We spoke about our days. After years of nothing, Daniel and I leased a 2-bedroom apartment across town, far enough from my old home to seem like an escape. The walls were white, plain, and neutral like every rental apartment I'd seen. I painted the bedroom a soft blue from a dozen color samples the first weekend, and Daniel chose gray for the living room to make it feel bigger. We put furniture to fit our lifestyle, not someone else's. I hung pictures of Daniel and me on the walls. Every decision appeared ours, not inherited or influenced by family or a toxic background. Our vacations and dinners, a record of our life together. No family photographs or photos of people who'd ignored me for years. This place was ours, where nobody could demand things or make me feel bad for defending myself. I woke up 4 months after the restraining order to find I'd slept all night without feeling concerned. Catalina said I'd delivered good patient care despite personal stress. Daniel and I got into comfortable routines, preparing supper most nights and talking about our days without family conflict. After discovering Mom's demands, I started reconnecting with cousins and extended family over coffee or lunch. It was awkward at first, but it got easier as we built new relationships based on honesty, rather than Mom's carefully controlled narrative. My cousin invited me to her daughter's birthday party, my first family event in over a decade. Instead of waiting for the next crisis or harassing occurrence, I brought a gift and spent 2 hours with relatives who apologized for believing Mom's lies and rejecting me. Dad and I met for coffee on the first Saturday of every month at the same downtown cafe where we could talk uninterrupted. He always arrived on time, which may seem easy, but it was crucial given his history of prioritizing Mom's comfort above mine. During these coffee encounters, he said he should have protected me when I was younger, stood up to Mom when she booted me out, and reached out during the 12 years of quiet. We would have been better off if Dad had been a better parent from the start, but our connection was becoming genuine and honest instead of the dream relationship I sought as a kid. He cared about my life, remembered facts from earlier talks, and accepted my boundaries when I didn't want to talk about Mom or Ethan. The monthly coffee sessions seemed like beginning again rather than healing something that had always been broken. I sat in the flat. Daniel and I created together, looking at the blue bedroom walls and our life photos and realizing something had changed inside me. I didn't need Mom's approval or Ethan's gratitude or acknowledgement that his expectations were unreasonable to know I'd made the right choice protecting my health and refusing an illegal demand. Daniel, Catalina, Michaela, Mark and family members respected my boundaries and treated me like a person, not a resource. The restraining order protected me, and I carefully documented everything in case Mom tried anything else. I had created a life where my needs and voice were heard. I let some family relationships die because they were toxic and one-sided. Others improved over time based on honesty and mutual respect instead of blame and guilt. Dad was trying to change, so I let him show his dedication. After 30 years of impressing rejection-prone individuals, choosing myself felt wonderful. My parents gave my sister their inheritance, but she squandered it on a lazy husband. Now they expect me to take care of them in exchange for a share. Growing up, it was obvious to me that Emily was my parents' favorite child. She was their little princess, whom they adored and regarded as incapable of doing wrong. It was as if their entire world revolved around her, and everything she did was met with admiration and praise. Whether it was a minor accomplishment at school or something as simple as her smiling at them, they were filled with pride and happiness. On the other hand, I was the oldest, and my parents were not like me. If I needed something, it would arrive only after Emily's needs were met. If I had an issue, it was rarely addressed. I often felt like an afterthought to them. Emily and I have never had any bad blood. I really liked her, and despite everything, I never felt resentful towards her. I understand that in situations like ours, siblings frequently develop jealousy or bitterness. But I never considered her an enemy. She was just my little sister. Of course, there were moments when I wished things were different. I wish I wasn't always the one pushed to the sidelines, putting my needs and feelings second. But, at the same time, I knew Emily was not to blame. She didn't choose to be the favorite, and I didn't want to be overlooked. Let me give you some examples of how much my parents preferred Emily over me. Every year for her birthday, we would visit Disneyland. This would be a full day of fun, excitement, and making lasting memories. Emily always looked forward to it, and my parents made it a memorable occasion. Meanwhile, when my birthday came, there were no big trips or extravagant gifts. Instead, we'd go out to dinner at a nearby restaurant. The difference was obvious. Emily's birthday was a big deal, whereas mine felt like a chore. When it came to extracurricular activities, my parents always prioritized Emily first. They only had enough money to cover one child's after-school activities, so they chose ballet over tennis. The frustrating part was that I was actually quite good at tennis. I enjoyed playing and had the potential to go far, but my parents did not consider it important. Instead, they advised me to focus on my studies, rather than what they considered a game. In reality, they just didn't want to invest in me. Emily was never an outstanding student. She never got a higher grade than a B, but it didn't seem to matter. Every report card she brought home, my parents would congratulate her on her efforts, express their pride in her, and sometimes even reward her with gifts or a special treat. For me, the story was entirely different. Even if I had won first place, there was no recognition, excitement, or rewards. My parents always expected me to get high grades. Not because they were concerned about my achievements, but because they wanted me to set a good example for Emily, my younger sister. If I did not meet their high standards, I would be chastised, lectured, or made to feel as if I had failed them. Regardless of how hard I worked, my accomplishments were never recognized in the same way Emily's were. My parents rarely provided financial support after I graduated from high school and attended university. I was expected to take out student loans and figure things out on my own because they assumed I was self-sufficient and responsible enough to handle everything. Meanwhile, when it was Emily's turn to attend college, my parents paid for all of her expenses without hesitation. They reasoned that she was too young to bear the stress of a loan. This felt extremely unfair to me, as if I didn't deserve the same assistance simply because I'd learned to care for myself. It was frustrating, but I had come to accept that this was the way things were in our family. Emily got a brand new car the moment she turned 19. My parents proudly handed her the keys. She didn't have to ask, beg, or prove she needed it. It was simply handed to her, with no questions asked. Meanwhile, when I needed a car for a part-time job in college, I had to ask my mother several times before she agreed to let me borrow her old beat-up vehicle. It wasn't in perfect condition, but I was glad to have anything at all. The problem was that the car was constantly breaking down. Some days, I'd be stuck on the side of the road, desperately trying to get it to restart. When I asked my parents for help with repairs, they declined. My father would tell me that if I wanted to drive, I needed to figure it out on my own. So, whenever my car broke down, I was forced to take the bus to work, no matter how inconvenient it was. Whether it was freezing cold, pouring rain, or oppressively hot, I had to forge my own path. My parents didn't seem to care how difficult things were for me. When my maternal elderly relatives died, my mother inherited everything they had left behind. It was a significant amount, and while I had not expected to receive any of it, I was also unprepared for what came next. Instead of spending the money on something meaningful for the whole family, she chose to go on a special trip just for herself and Emily. I wasn't even informed about it. I didn't realize they were going until I saw Emily's social media updates. She had shared photos of herself and her mother eating fancy dinners and staying in a luxurious resort. I was surprised and asked my sister where it was. She left me at red. Seeing those posts hurt in ways I can't describe. It wasn't only about the trip. It was the realization that they had not even considered inviting me. When I later confronted my mother about it, she made lame excuses. She claimed that she had made last-minute plans with my sister and that neither of them knew whether I would be available to attend. Mom also admitted that she has always felt more connected to Emily than to me because my sister is more like her, and she didn't expect me to mind as much. When I heard this, I burst into tears because hearing such things from my own mother hurts. I realized that no matter how hard I tried to fit in, I would always be on the outside. My parents were overjoyed when Emily graduated from college. They treated it as if she had done something unprecedented in our family. My mother was so proud that she gave Emily half of my grandparents' inheritance, with no conditions attached. She told her she could spend the money on anything she wanted, including travel, a new car, a business idea, or simply enjoying life. It was a huge gift, providing Emily with a secure financial foundation as she entered adulthood. Meanwhile, I got nothing. I did not expect half of the inheritance, but being completely overlooked once more was a slap in the face. I had worked hard, supported myself through college with minimal assistance, and never asked for much. However, my mother believed that I did not deserve any help. When I dared to question why Emily was given so much while I was given so little, my parents dismissed me. They told me that as the oldest, I was expected to be independent, strong, and self-sufficient, rather than relying on handouts. My father tried to make it sound like a compliment, saying that he believed in me and that I didn't need their help because I was capable of succeeding on my own. However, Emily did not appear to share this belief. She was always viewed as the one who required additional assistance, the one who needed to be protected and provided for. It was frustrating and disheartening that, while I was always expected to figure things out on my own, Emily was given everything on a silver platter. Despite everything, I've tried not to harbor resentment toward my parents for how they treated me. I have also tried not to resent Emily. As much as I adore her, I can't ignore the fact that she has never truly stood up for me. She's never admitted how unfair things have been. Never informed our parents that what they were doing was wrong. Part of me wishes she had spoken up and told them I deserved better, but she never did. She always accepted their generosity without question, never considering how I felt when I was left behind. And that has been the most difficult part for me to overcome. Anyway, because my parents had always delegated everything to Emily, conflicts between them began to emerge over time. Despite the money they had given her, Emily chose to return home after college. She explained that she wanted to save more money. However, it appeared that she preferred to rely on our parents rather than be independent. At first, my parents did not appear to mind. They had always coddled her, so having her back home was probably comforting to them. However, the situation gradually became too much for them. Emily wasn't just living with them. She relied completely on them for everything. She would insist that Dad buy expensive groceries, regardless of how much they cost or whether they were within the household budget. She never contributed to any expenses, never offered to help with bills, and always acted as if their money was hers to spend however she wanted. In addition, she expected her mother to continue to care for her as if she were a child. She refused to do her own laundry and instead relied on her mother. She did no housework, never cooked or cleaned, and treated the house as if it were her personal hotel. The same parents who had previously given her everything without hesitation were now feeling the consequences of their own actions and complaining. My parents didn't mind at first, just as they had no problem giving Emily whatever she desired. They had spent years making sure she never had to struggle. So having her live at home rent-free and relying on them for everything felt natural to them. However, as they got older, things started to change. They didn't have as much energy as before. They began to expect Emily to step up, even if it meant taking on minor responsibilities. That's when the fight started between them. Emily would get upset whenever they asked her to help with groceries, pay for something, or even do simple household chores. She thought it was unfair of them to expect anything from her when all she wanted to do was relax at home and play video games. My sister no longer felt compelled to look for work after her mother gave her half of the inheritance, so she spent the day lounging around the house doing nothing. However, this was not the only issue. Emily had also developed the habit of staying out late and returning home at odd hours. My parents would wait up for her, worried, but she didn't care. She was living her life on her own terms, without regard for how it affected others. My parents, who had always made excuses for her, were now dealing with the consequences of their actions. They had spent years giving her everything and shielding her from consequences. And now that they expect her to act like an adult, she simply refuses. Emily's situation deteriorated after she met someone online and fell in love with him. Tom was the epitome of a deadbeat. He had no job, no ambition, and no firm plans for the future. He only seemed to care about persuading Emily to send him money, which she did. It didn't matter if everyone else realized he was taking advantage of her. My parents and I tried several times to warn her that he was only taking advantage of her, but she would not listen. Every time we mentioned it, she became defensive, sometimes furious, and insisted that we didn't understand. She did not consider her actions to be foolish. It was just true love. Emily was always willing to accommodate Tom's requests. She'd send him money for rent, food, and even non-essential purchases like new clothes or video games. It didn't matter that she was still living on my parents' money and had received it as an inheritance. Whatever Tom wanted, she found a way to give it to him. My parents, who had always spoiled their daughter, now had to watch another person take advantage of her. Emily refused to hear anything negative about him, no matter how hard they tried. She believed that helping him demonstrated her loyalty, and she refused to accept the reality of the situation. Emily abruptly decided 3 months ago to flee and marry Tom. It was completely unexpected. There were no indications, prior discussions, or anything to suggest that she had planned such a significant step. She was living at home as usual one day, and then disappeared the next. She didn't even tell our parents until afterward. We only found out when she video called us from her honeymoon. She proudly announced that she and her new husband Tom planned to travel the world and fund their grand adventure. They intended to use my sister's inheritance, or what remained of it. This was the same money that my parents had assumed she would use for something responsible, like a house or a secure future. Instead, she intended to spend it on her absentee husband. As you might expect, my parents were furious. Mom was particularly upset. She thought she knew her daughter better than anyone. For years my parents had favored her, giving her whatever she wanted. And now, in their eyes, she had abandoned everything for a man she hardly knew. Things have not been the same since. My parents, who once went above and beyond for Emily, have now realized the consequences of their actions. They have reduced all communication with her. Now that my sister is no longer their favorite, I've noticed a shift in how my parents treat me. It's as if they've suddenly checked in on me, want to go out to lunch with me, and are attempting to include me in activities they've never been interested in before. My mother, who used to barely acknowledge my presence unless she needed something, now calls just to talk. She has suddenly begun calling me whenever she wishes to go shopping. For years, I'd seen her and Emily go shopping while I was excluded. She now acts as if including me is normal, as if we have always had this type of relationship. My father also calls frequently to check on my work, health, and whether I need anything. Family dinners have also changed. Previously they would make plans without considering my availability. I was just an afterthought, invited if it was convenient, but not a top priority. But now they plan family dinners around my availability. They confirm my attendance, contact me before making plans, and appear to be excited about my presence. It's strange, almost unsettling. Even socially things have changed. They expect me to accompany them to any weddings or family gatherings where they are invited. It will be great to have you there, they say, as if they have always been concerned about my presence. Meanwhile, whenever Emily was present, they never asked if I wanted to leave. It's as if they've decided to make me a replacement for my sister. Part of me wants to embrace this change so that I can finally get the attention and care I wished for as a child, but another part of me is skeptical. Was this simply a matter of convenience, as Emily was no longer available to be their ideal daughter? But, unlike Emily, they expect me to work for them. For example, when my father became ill, my mother was unable to help him much due to a bad back. They suddenly expected me to step in and care for him without asking any questions. When my father was in the hospital, they encouraged me to visit him as frequently as possible, almost as if it was my responsibility to be there every day. They expected me to drop everything and focus on them, something they never asked Emily to do when she was the one they cared about. Then, over Christmas, my parents sat me down for what appeared to be a serious discussion. They informed me that they had decided to give me a portion of the inheritance my mother had received from her elderly relatives but had previously decided not to pass down to me. Keep in mind that my mother had already given half to my sister, so she decided to share some of what was left with me. My mother told me that she and her father thought they should have given me the money right away and hoped that I would use this inheritance to invest wisely or buy myself a new car because, according to them, my 4-year-old car had served its purpose and it was time for an upgrade. I was completely caught off guard. My parents had never been as generous to me before. For years, Emily had received expensive gifts and financial assistance, while I had been told to be self-sufficient and care for myself. I was understandably suspicious. When I looked at them and asked, Why are you suddenly being so nice to me? They revealed the truth. My parents sighed and admitted that they had learned their lesson after what had happened to Emily. My father went on to say that they could never trust her again because she had willingly spent all of her money to run off and marry a deadbeat. Instead of giving her more money, which she would undoubtedly waste, they chose to give it to me because they trusted I would use it responsibly. Mom looked at me and told me that in exchange for their generosity, all they wanted was for me to be their temporary favorite child. She said it casually, as if it were a perfectly normal thing to say. According to her, this meant that I should listen to them, be there for them, and look after them now that they were older and had no one else to turn to. Dad chimed in, saying he had always known I was the more responsible one, and he had high hopes for me, that I would not let them down like Emily had. I sat there staring at them, attempting to process what I had just heard. Hearing them say this confirmed what I had suspected. This was not love. This was not appreciation. This felt like they were attempting to bribe me into taking care of them. They'd lost Emily, their golden child. So now they wanted me not only to replace her, but also to cater to their needs. Their motivation for giving me money was not to make amends for how they had treated me previously. It wasn't because they regretted having ignored me all these years. No, they needed something from me right now. They offered me these gifts with strings attached. They expected something in return. My obedience, presence, and care. They didn't appreciate me as a person. It was about creating a safety net for themselves now that Emily was no longer present. At that moment, I realized something painful. My parents never really changed. They did not suddenly wake up and recognize my worth. They simply shifted their preferences because Emily had let them down. And now I was just their backup plan. Now, I could have refused the money. I certainly could have protested. I could have called them out on their hypocrisy, pointed out how they had ignored me for years, and expressed my true feelings, but I didn't because there was no point. It wasn't as if they'd suddenly realize their error and apologize. It was unlikely that they would finally admit how unfair they had been. Instead, I decided to simply accept what they were offering. My parents had never given me financial assistance before. I had always been the independent one, the one who had to struggle and work for everything, whereas Emily received handouts. My sister had been spoiled with expensive gifts, free college tuition, a brand new car at the age of 19, and half of the inheritance from my elderly relatives. So what did she do with it? She took off and spent everything on herself and her husband. Meanwhile, I worked hard for everything I had, with no assistance from my parents. She had received more than enough from my parents over the years. So, if they finally wanted to give me something, who am I to refuse? So I kept my mouth shut and accepted the money. However, since then, my parents' expectations of me have only grown. Every day they appear to feel more entitled to me. My mother always relies on me to drive her around, despite the fact that she is perfectly capable of driving herself. If I refuse, she reminds me that no matter what I've given you, you can't even do this simple thing for me. She acts like the money she gave me was some kind of lifelong contract, binding me to her every whim, and my father is no different. He now expects me to handle everything for him, paying his bills, ordering things online, filling out paperwork, making appointments and fixing things around the house. If he needs something he calls me first, as if I'm his personal assistant, rather than his child. It's frustrating because, while I expected them to occasionally call me for help, I never expected them to put the entire burden entirely on my shoulders. Emily was never asked to be responsible for anything, but with me, it's as if they assume I owe them my time and effort simply because they finally decided to acknowledge me. And I despise it. In addition to managing my own life and work, I now have to constantly think about my parents and their endless demands, which is exhausting, overwhelming, and extremely unfair. I never asked for this money, but now it feels like they only gave it to me so they could use it as leverage. To make matters worse, my mother fell down the stairs yesterday. She had to be taken to the hospital, and the doctors ordered her to be on bed rest for at least 3 weeks. My father then called and asked me to move in with them so I could care for Mom 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was taken aback, and I told him that while I could visit her every evening, I couldn't just drop everything and move in to care for her full time. My parents are upset with me and accuse me of being too self-centered. Dad argued that they had given me money specifically for this purpose, so skipping work wasn't a big deal. But I stood firm, telling him that he couldn't just dictate my life and that I refused to become their full-time caregiver. So, Reddit, am I an a-hole? Update 1. Many people have asked me why I didn't just refuse the money, or why I'm still interacting with my parents after everything they've put me through. The truth is that I don't want to regret not helping them. As much as I resent how they treated me growing up, they are still my parents. A part of me fears that if I completely cut them off, I'll look back and feel guilty for not being there when they needed me. They're getting older, and while I know they're only coming to me now because Emily let them down, I can't help but feel some responsibility. Maybe it's the years of being forced into the mature and responsible role. Maybe it's just my conscience, but I don't want to be the type of person who walks away and later wonders, what if I had done more? That being said, I also don't want to be taken advantage of. Since my parents began treating me as their new favorite, their expectations have been overwhelming, and I'm attempting to strike a balance. I don't want to completely cut them out of my life, but I also don't want to let them guilt-trip me into being at their beck and call. If they truly regret how they treated me in the past, they should show it through their actions, not by suddenly expecting me to step in and replace Emily. I haven't fully decided how to handle everything yet, but in the end, I hired a caretaker for my mother and am covering the entire cost. My father isn't happy with this decision. He believes that no outsider can care for Mom in the same way that a family member can, and he thinks I'm selfish. I can't always keep them happy, so this is the best option for everyone. In case you're wondering, my sister is fine. She and her husband are still traveling and enjoying life, and she video calls us every now and then to check in. However, my parents no longer tolerate her. They're still angry about how she betrayed them by fleeing and using the money they gave her to fund her own adventures instead of, I suppose, staying at home and relying on them forever. It's strange to see how quickly their love for her has turned into resentment. Emily could do no wrong in their eyes for years, and now they act like she's the worst person in the world. It's not that she's suddenly turned into a bad person, she's just doing what she's always done, putting herself first. The only difference is that it no longer benefits them. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since my last update, and I finally sat down and had an open conversation with my parents. I told them everything. How I felt growing up with them, how I saw them favor Emily over me over and over, and how it made me feel inadequate, as if I was never enough for them. With Emily out of the picture, it felt like they were just using me as a replacement rather than genuinely caring about me. I also made it clear that just because they had suddenly decided to give me money did not mean I owed them anything. I told them how exhausting it was to be treated like their personal assistant. I was not their servant, and I refused to be guilt-tripped into taking care of them when they had spent years pushing me aside. At first they argued, saying things like, "We didn't think you would mind, and we just thought you were capable enough to handle everything," as if that somehow made up for their behavior. But I stood firm, and in the end, after all, this is the first time I've expressed my feelings to them, and they now realize that if they want me in their lives, they must treat me with the respect I deserve. Update 3. It's been 5 months since my last update, and I followed some of your advice and went to therapy, which has been one of the best things I've ever done for myself. It's helped me process a lot of the emotions I've buried over the years, and I'm gradually learning to set boundaries with my parents without feeling guilty. Surprisingly, my parents have become more understanding in recent months, and they no longer expect me to be at their beck and call. We still spend time together, but it feels normal now, like a genuine parent-child relationship rather than an obligation. It's not perfect, but it's much better than before. Meanwhile, as I expected, Emily has been trying to make her way back. Turns out, all of her money is gone, and her husband continues to refuse work. She recently approached me for help, but I declined because I knew if I gave in once, she'd keep coming back, and I'm not about to start funding her lifestyle. She also went to my parents, hoping they'd take her back, but they stood firm and told her she was on her own this time. Emily and her husband are currently living in his parents' basement, and I hope she will eventually figure things out and learn to care for herself. My parents told me they never saved for my college because we didn't think you'd amount to much, while my brother got a car and endless praise. I turned 21 on a Tuesday. There was no party, cake or candles, just a strange, quiet dinner where my parents exchanged glances as if they were expecting something to explode. I recall that the mashed potatoes were lumpy and cold, and the chicken was dry. I sat there pushing food around my plate, wondering if they had a surprise planned. They did not. After dinner, my mother cleared her throat and asked, "Ethan, can you come sit in the living room? We need to talk." My father was already seated in his usual recliner, legs crossed and arms folded. That expression on his face, in which he tries to appear serious but ends up looking like he's trying too hard, was already setting off alarms in my head. I sat across from them, hoping for a brief moment that they would express their pride. Maybe even something cheesy like, "You're a man now." I've been working part-time at a local hardware store since I was 19 to keep my grades up, and I even got into a state university on partial scholarship. I didn't expect fireworks, but I also didn't anticipate what happened next. "We just wanted to be honest with you," my mother began. Her voice was calm and rehearsed. "We never really saved anything for your college." I blinked, trying to process. Before I could react, my father jumped in, as if he couldn't take it anymore. "It's not that we didn't want to," he admitted, leaning forward. "It's just, well, we honestly didn't think you'd actually go or amount to much." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so jarring. I thought maybe they were joking, but they weren't. My mom just gave me this tired, almost pitying smile. "You were always kind of unfocused, not like your brother." And there it was. My younger brother, Jacob. Golden boy. Honor roll. Private soccer lessons since age 9. I love him. I really do. But he's always been their favorite. When he turned 19, they threw him a surprise party with a shiny new car parked out front. He got a college fund. I got a pair of socks and a keychain that said, "Go get him." I shrugged it off at the time, thinking they were waiting to help me when I actually got in somewhere. I figured they were just being cautious. Turns out they'd written me off years ago. I didn't yell or cry, I just sat there nodding slowly, pretending it didn't hurt like hell. "Okay," I said. "Thanks for telling me." I went back to my room, shut the door, and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. That night I started applying for every scholarship and part-time job I could find, including weekend shifts at a local diner, odd jobs on campus bulletin boards, and even tutoring younger kids for money. I was determined to go to college, even if it meant crawling there. That was 8 months ago, and now I'm in my second semester working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, and sometimes skipping meals just to make ends meet. But every few weeks I get a text from my mother saying something like, "You've been really distant lately. Is everything okay?" Or worse, she'll send one of those guilt-inducing messages like, "We're still your family, Ethan. You can't ignore us forever." As if I owe them closeness after what they did. As if I'm the one pulling away for no reason. What really drives the knife deeper is how they keep bragging about Jacob's potential as if it's a group project in which they're all invested. He's not even sure if he wants to go to college, they gave him everything, and he's still trying to find himself. Meanwhile, I'm working 10-hour shifts and passing exams with barely enough energy to keep my eyes open. Last week I went home for the first time in months, mostly because Jacob begged me to, and he doesn't know the whole story, just that things have been strange between me and our parents. When I walked into the living room I saw my mother showing someone a photo of Jacob holding up his acceptance letter, grinning like he had just won the lottery. She looked so proud, and I stood there in the doorway, invisible. She turned and hugged me quickly, then said, "You look tired, Ethan. Maybe if you let us help you won't have to run yourself to the ground." Help? Do they now want to help? I said nothing, just smiled and nodded. But something changed in me that night. I realized they'd never see me as anything other than the backup plan, the afterthought, the kid who somehow failed to fail. And maybe that's what bothers them the most. That I didn't crumble when they let me down. That I didn't become the disappointment they were so sure I'd be. What they don't know is that I've been keeping track of everything. The money they put into Jacob's dreams, the way they spoke about me when they thought I wasn't listening, the backhanded compliments, the subtle digs, the complete lack of support. I've been biting my tongue, and if they think I'm distant now, they haven't seen anything yet. I couldn't stop thinking about how my mom looked at me when she said I looked tired, not concerned, not sympathetic, just vaguely judgmental, as if I'd brought it on myself. Maybe struggling to put myself through school, working night shifts at the diner, and early morning stocking shelves was proof that I wasn't. That week, back on campus, I pulled 4 doubles in a row, slept on the floor of my tiny apartment between shifts, and still managed to turn in a 10-page essay on time. Then on Friday, I got a call from my father, who never calls, and I let it go to voicemail. I had just finished a graveyard shift and was walking home in the early dawn, my feet aching and my shirt clinging to me with the scent of burnt eggs and coffee. I listened to the voicemail while walking under gray skies, half zoning out. "Hey Ethan. Listen. We were wondering if you'd be available next weekend. It's Jacob's big showcase for his photography class, the one where his work is featured in the school lobby. We'd love to see you there. The whole family is going. Your mom has even ordered catering. Just let us know." Okay, I stopped walking. Catering for a high school photography exhibit. And suddenly I was 19 again. Standing in the rain outside my school's debate final, waiting for someone, anyone, to show up and cheer me on. They never did. They said they had errands. That it wasn't a big deal. And yet here they were, now pulling out the red carpet for Jacob's artsy photo collage. I didn't call back. I didn't even text. When the weekend came, I picked up an extra shift at the diner. During my break, I scrolled through my mom's Facebook and saw her latest post. A dozen photos of Jacob standing next to his photos, framed and lit up. The caption read, "So proud of our baby boy and his incredible talent. He smiles with mom and dad, poses with his friends and laughs. The future is bright, and we'll always be your biggest fans." I kept scrolling until I came across another post from earlier that week, a photo of me taken without my permission while working at the diner. Someone had tagged me in the background, blurry and hunched over a counter, and my mother had commented, "Our other son is working hard. He's always been such a trooper." There was no context, no pride, just pity. Around this time, the requests began to come in, but not for me. "Hey Ethan," my mother texted one afternoon. "Jacob's thinking about applying to the same university as you. Would you be willing to help him with his application? Just some editing and feedback." The same university. The one I fought my way into. The one I could only attend because I practically sold pieces of my soul to every scholarship committee willing to listen. The idea of him simply walking in because he liked the vibe felt like someone had dumped boiling water down my back. I waited a full day to respond, then wrote, "Sorry, I'm swamped with work and exams. Maybe he can ask one of his teachers." There was no response. A week later, my father called again, and this time I answered mostly out of curiosity. I was standing outside the grocery store with a bag of discounted instant noodles. "Hey Ethan," he said casually. "Quick question. Do you still have the old laptop?" "Yes," I said slowly. "Why?" "Well, Jacob's just broke, and we figured if you don't need it anymore, he could use it. He's starting to apply to colleges now, and it would be extremely helpful." I blinked. "You mean the laptop I still use for school? Which one am I currently writing papers on?" There was a pause. "Oh, I just assumed you'd upgraded by now." I laughed dryly and bitter. "No Dad, I have it because I can't afford to." He didn't apologize, just kind of chuckled awkwardly and said, "Well, maybe let us know when you do, all right?" That's when it dawned on me. They weren't just favoring Jacob. They saw me as an accessory, a spare tire, to be used when convenient and stored away when not. It wasn't about love or fairness. It was about expectation. Jacob deserved things, and I was supposed to earn scraps and be grateful for them. A few days later, I got sick. Not just a little flu, but really sick. I had a fever, a sore throat, a full body ache, and it felt like my organs were melting. I had to call out of work, which meant I missed rent by about $50. I texted my mother, not to ask for help, but out of desperation to feel human. "I've been sick. I haven't slept. Can't work." She replied, 3 hours later, "I hope you feel better soon. Drink tea. Maybe Jacob can drop off some soup if he has time." He didn't, and when I finally got out of bed 3 days later to check my mailbox, there was a card in it. One of those cheap dollar store greeting cards with a puppy on the front. Inside was a $15 bill and a sticky note that said, "You've always been a fighter. We believe in you. Love, Mom and Dad." I stared at it for a long time. $15. Meanwhile, I knew Jacob was about to get a new camera, which Dad had mentioned on Facebook. I stopped responding to texts, because I realized I would never be enough for them, not even close, and the more I tried to earn their love, the more pathetic I looked in their eyes. That was the tipping point, not a scream or a blow-up, but a quiet, seething realization. I declined calls, and then came the moment that turned my frustration into rage. 3 weeks later, I was on my way to work when I ran into Jacob on campus. He looked surprised but happy. "Hey man, I didn't know you had class in this building." I told him I was on my way to work, and he frowned. "Still doing that diner thing?" "I'm still paying my own way," I explained. He laughed as if it were a joke, and then he said something I'll never forget. "You know, Mom and Dad were going to help you with your tuition at one point, but they thought it would make you complacent. Like you'd give up trying." I froze. "Yeah," he continued, oblivious. "They said you needed to struggle a little to stay motivated. Like if they handed you money, you'd just waste it. I stared at him, my own brother, paring back the logic that justified my suffering. He shrugged. Anyway, I have to run. I have a meeting with the student gallery director. They're thinking about giving me my own wall this spring. I remained motionless, staring after him as he walked away. The world didn't blur or shake, it just hollowed out. That was when I decided I was done playing along, done pretending the distance was unintentional, done giving them any part of me that they hadn't already discarded. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew it wasn't over. Not by a long stretch. I didn't go to work that day. Instead, I walked past the diner, the student center, and everything else until I found a quiet spot behind the library and sat down on the cold concrete. I don't know how long I sat there, an hour or two, staring at the cracks in the sidewalk, watching ants crawl around like they had somewhere to be. I kept thinking about Jacob's words. They thought that if they helped me, I'd stop trying, that I'd become lazy, that I didn't deserve help. I'd been breaking my back for 2 years straight, working myself to the ground while they watched from a distance and congratulated themselves on how my suffering was noble, necessary, and character-building. I felt rage, yes. But beneath it was something deeper, something I hadn't admitted to myself until that moment. Shame. Not because I'd failed, but because I'd spent so long chasing scraps from people who never saw me as worth feeding in the first place. And now, the worst part. I felt hollow. That night I went home to my apartment and stared at the bills on the kitchen counter. Rent was 7 days overdue, electricity was due in 3 days, my phone had a 5% battery and I couldn't find my charger. I hadn't eaten anything but a gas station granola bar since yesterday morning, and I was exhausted. I lay down on the floor because my bed was covered in clean laundry that I hadn't folded, pulled a hoodie over my face to block out the light from the hallway, and just stopped for 3 days. I didn't go to work, I missed class, I let my phone die, I didn't eat, and I didn't shower. I just lay there feeling like a ghost inside my own skin, and when I finally got up, when my stomach hurt so bad from hunger that I couldn't ignore it any longer, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My face was pale, my eyes sunken, and the bags under my eyes were so dark they looked like bruises. Still, I reached for my backpack, grabbed my laptop, and walked to the campus library. The only thing they hadn't taken from me was my mind. I began slowly, with 1 email, 1 scholarship, and 1 line on a resume. I applied for a campus tutoring job, then another part-time job at the computer lab, and went to the financial aid office to ask questions I should have asked a year ago. I ate ramen for a week straight and drank water from the library fountains. I discovered emergency grants that I had no idea existed, sold a few old books online, and even posted my notes from last semester's chemistry class on a study help site and started making $15 here and there as people downloaded them. I used to sleep with my coat on because I couldn't afford to turn on the heat, but I kept going. I started getting up early, not because I had energy, but because I needed time to work before classes. I'd work shifts at the computer lab from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., then sprint to class. In the afternoons I tutored high school students via Zoom, using the library study pods for privacy. I even started helping a freshman with math in exchange for meals. He had a generous meal plan and didn't mind sharing if I helped him pass calculus. And slowly, so slowly, I started to breathe again. There was this moment about a month later that I still remember. It was 7:45 a.m., and I was sitting at the computer lab desk eating a banana from the tutoring center's free snack table. The sun was pouring through the windows, lighting up the dust in the air, and for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like a failure. I didn't feel like someone chasing approval or trying to win affection. I felt capable. I'd done this despite them, not because of them. And then the universe threw me a bone. I got accepted into a research fellowship program that paid a monthly stipend and provided me with lab experience. I applied on a whim weeks earlier, thinking I'd never get it, but I did, and the email came with the subject line, "Congratulations, Ethan." I sat there and read it 5 times before I let myself believe it. 4 days later, I was able to pay rent on time for the first time in months. I bought a space heater, restocked my fridge with actual food, and even replaced my frayed backpack with one I found on sale. Then, in an impulsive act of self-care, I bought a cheap journal and began writing again. Something I hadn't done since I was 17. It wasn't all sunshine after that. Jacob posted a video of his college decision reveal, and there they were again, Mom and Dad clapping, crying, and hugging him as he opened his acceptance letter. They bought him balloons, took him to dinner, and made a slideshow about his accomplishments. I still had moments when I was bitter, and seeing family photos online hurt like a wound I kept scratching. The caption said, "One down, one to go." As if I were just background noise, but something inside me had changed. They didn't break me. They tried. Whether they meant to or not, they loaded me down with doubt, tied bricks to my legs, and tossed me in the deep end. But I swam. I clawed my way back to the surface, breathless and shaking, but alive. And one night, sitting at my desk with a cup of actual tea in hand and the heat humming quietly in the corner, I realized something strange. I no longer cared if they ever said, "We're proud of you." Because I was proud of myself. I didn't need their words. I didn't need their guilt-tripped apologies, backhanded praise, or thinly veiled pity. I had built something out of ashes, found my footing in a storm, and now I was watching, waiting, not for them to change, but for the moment they'd need something from me, which I knew would come, and when it did, I'd be ready. By the time spring rolled around, I had a routine that worked. I was still working long hours, but the research fellowship provided me with enough stability to stop worrying about the next rent deadline. I had groceries in the fridge, a desk that no longer wobbled, and my own copy of the campus gym pass, which I had won in a scholarship raffle. But I wasn't exhausted. I was driven, focused, and something else had started to grow alongside that drive. Clarity. It started with a single question, the kind that buzzes in the back of your mind when things go quiet. What would they do if the roles were reversed? I thought about that more than I'd admit. What would they do if I were the golden child and Jacob was scraping by? Would they have let him struggle like they let me? Would they have made him fight for every? The answer wasn't hard to guess. They never expected me to win, or even compete, and now that I was doing better than ever, there was a strange tension in the air whenever we talked, because we still talked on occasion out of obligation more than anything else. My mother would send me little check-in texts, my father would send me boring news articles he thought were relevant to my major, and Jacob would send me selfies from campus, but none of them ever asked me real questions. They assumed I was still floundering, juggling plates with shaky hands. So I let them think that. At first it was just easier that way, but it gradually became strategic. I stopped posting on social media, I let my profile go dormant, and when I received new accomplishments, another grant, a published research paper, or a faculty recommendation, I didn't say anything, especially not to Jacob. Because around this time, Jacob began applying to my university, the same department, the same program, and I knew that the opportunity would come sooner than I expected. One afternoon, I was in the tutoring center when I overheard two faculty assistants discussing spring admissions. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I just recognized the name they mentioned, Jacob Monroe, and I froze. I leaned in closer, pretending to organize folders on the nearby shelf. His portfolio is strong, but the writing sample, yikes. Yeah. The other laughed. The photography is decent, but the essay was all over the place. A little entitled, if I'm being honest. They moved on to another applicant, but my ears were burning. That night, curiosity got the best of me. I logged into the student portal, where peer review opportunities were occasionally listed, and searched for Jacob's name. I didn't find his application, but I did find a research assistant listing he had applied for, the same one I'd been offered weeks earlier but turned down due to scheduling conflicts. And here's where it gets wild. He used my name as a reference. I was dropped in as someone who could vouch for his academic work, which I had never seen and knew was shaky at best because we discussed it last Thanksgiving. He complained about hating lab reports and not receiving any of the material. There was no prior notice, text or email. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I contacted Professor Owens, the one in charge of the RA program, and casually asked him if I could take the position after all. My tutoring schedule had lightened, I told him, and he was delighted to offer it back to me. That was step one. Step two was a little more satisfying. About a week later, Jacob texted me unexpectedly. "Hey man, I just applied for the Owens RA position. I used you as a reference. I hope that's okay." I waited 3 hours before responding. "I just saw it. I hope you are ready for it. It's a lot of work." He immediately responded. "Haha, yeah, but the props love me. It shouldn't be hard." I didn't respond after that because, while he was flexing, I was planning a meeting with Professor Owens in which I would quietly and professionally mention that, while I supported my brother's ambitions, I couldn't in good conscience recommend him for a research-heavy position after he admitted to struggling with the materials. I didn't trash him. I simply told the truth. Owens nodded thoughtfully. "That tracks. His writing sample wasn't great." Then, As if rewarding my candor, he added, "Glad you're on board again." Later that week, Jacob called me frustrated. "Did you talk with Professor Owens?" He emailed me this super vague rejection and said I didn't seem like the right fit. I kept my voice steady. "Yeah." He inquired about your work ethic and background. I told him what I knew. Silence. "You really used me as a reference without asking. What did you think would happen?" He did not yell. Jacob wasn't yelling, but I could feel the tension crackling through the phone like static. "You could have helped me." "No," I said calmly. "I could have lied for you. That's different." He hung up. I expected a reaction from my parents, but it never came, which meant one of two things. He hadn't told them, or he did, and they chose not to get involved. In any case, I kept going. Around this time, I started working on something bigger, something more permanent. I'd been working on a side project for months, a digital tutoring platform for underfunded schools in rural areas, which began as a class assignment but had grown into something real. With the help of a friend from the business department, we built a prototype, applied for funding, were approved, and won a pitch competition. By May, we had a small grant, 2 interns, and a partnership offer from a nonprofit I'd admired for years, and my name was attached to all of it, not buried in the footnotes, not hidden behind someone else's glow, mine. But I still hadn't said anything to my family, and I watched from the sidelines as they poured more money into Jacob's college prep, new laptop, new dorm furniture, and even a weekend retreat to clear his head before finals. Meanwhile, I paid off the last of my rent and bought a second-hand suit for professional meetings. I wasn't flashy, and I didn't post about it. I didn't need to, because this wasn't about proving myself anymore. It was about allowing them to underestimate me just long enough. Then the perfect opportunity presented itself, and I couldn't have scripted it better. Jacob got into my university, and they were overjoyed. My mother called and left a voicemail, my father sent a group text about the boys being reunited, and Jacob even texted me directly, acting as if we were on good terms again. "Looks like I'll be crashing your turf soon, maybe you can show me the ropes." I stared at that message for a long time because he had no idea what he was getting into. The first day of orientation was approaching, and I had already volunteered to help run the student panels that week. I had access to the speaker list, the student guides, the welcoming packets, and I knew everything about who was coming, what they'd be doing, and how to steer things in interesting directions, and I was ready to use it. Not out of pettiness, but out of precision. Because if they were going to spend years pretending I was invisible, I was going to show them what orientation week arrived with all the chaotic energy of a theme park on opening day. New students wandering campus with wide eyes, parents hauling suitcases, and campus guides barking directions with barely concealed exhaustion. I'd volunteered to be a member of the Student Success Panel, a carefully curated group of upperclassmen meant to inspire and reassure freshmen and their families. We were asked to share our stories, how we overcame obstacles, found community, and succeeded academically. It was supposed to be wholesome and uplifting, but I turned it into something entirely different. My moment. The event took place in the university's main auditorium, which was packed with incoming students and their parents. I recognized Jacob's voice before I saw him shouting something about parking to my mom. Sure enough, there they were. Jacob in his designer sneakers, mom in a bright floral cardigan, and dad scanning the crowd like he owned the place. They didn't see me on stage until I stood to speak. I was the final student on the panel, and the moderator handed me the mic with a smile. "Ethan, you are one of our research fellows and scholarship recipients. Why don't you tell everyone how you arrived here?" I took a breath, studying my heartbeat. Of course I'd love to, I told the truth. Not the clean, curated version, the real one. "I wasn't supposed to make it here," I said, pacing slowly across the stage. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I didn't have the support most students take for granted. I watched as some parents glanced at each other. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My younger brother, who's here today, actually got a full ride from our parents. They bought him a car at 19, gave him a college fund, and celebrated every win, big or small. I got a lecture on how they didn't think I'd ever amount to much. Gasps and chuckles of surprise. I worked 2 jobs to get here. I lived on instant noodles and barely slept to keep up my grades. Not because I was special, but because I had no other choice. However, I paused, locking eyes with Jacob in the 4th row. Pressure can either break or sharpen you. I chose to become sharper. The moderator tried to gently nudge me back to a lighter tone, but I waved her off with a smile. Sorry, this is important. There are students in this audience who believe they do not belong here and have been told that they will never be enough. I'm here to tell you that they're wrong. You do belong. You can thrive, and you don't need anyone's permission to prove it. The applause was awkward at first. Then it grew. My professors applauded. The faculty coordinator nodded. Even the moderator had to admit how powerful it was. My parents sat stone-faced, completely surprised. Jacob stared at the floor. And that was just the beginning. After the panel, parents and students interacted with the speakers. A few kids approached to shake my hand. One mother hugged me and whispered, "My son needed to hear that." Meanwhile, Jacob vanished behind the auditorium, most likely hoping to avoid the consequences. But I wasn't finished yet. I had one final card to play. That afternoon, a reception was held for the families of students who received academic honors or leadership positions. It was an invitation-only event, and while Jacob was not invited, I was, and this year, I wasn't there alone. See, I had sent 2 of my own invitations. One went to my favorite professor who has mentored me since my second semester and treated me as an equal. The other went to Mr. Baines, my high school guidance counselor, once told me I wasn't competitive enough for college. He appeared stunned, impressed, and graying at the temples. "Ethan," he replied, shaking my hand. "I can't believe this. You appear successful." "I am," I stated unequivocally. "And I remember everything you said to me, by the way." He laughed nervously, but I simply smiled and walked away. My parents arrived late. I could tell by their expressions that they were not expecting the red carpet. They expected a casual meet and greet rather than a catered event complete with media booths, donors, and a slideshow highlighting student achievements. And on that slideshow, on the largest screen in the room, was a slide that said, "Ethan Monroe, Research Fellow, Co-Founder, Equity Tutor, funded by the Blake Foundation, Academic Excellence Award, Invited Speaker, Student Leadership Panel." First, my mother's mouth fell open as the slide cycled past. My father blinked slowly, as if trying to reboot his brain. They had no idea who I had become. And just when I thought I'd had enough, fate gave me another gift. A local journalist covering orientation week wanted to interview me for a short feature on student resilience. I agreed. The article went live 3 days later. It began with my quotation. "My parents told me they never saved for college because they didn't think I'd attend." That moment broke something in me, but it also started a fire. The piece went viral on campus, and by the end of the week, I had received a message from Jacob. "You embarrassed the whole family. You didn't have to drag us through the mud like that." I replied. "I didn't name names. If they recognize themselves in my story, that's up to them." He left me to read. My mother tried to call me a few days later. I let it ring. Then another message came in. "We're sorry if we ever made you feel lesser. That was never our intention." I didn't reply. I had nothing else to say because I didn't do any of this for vengeance. Not really. That was all the motivation I needed to keep going when everything seemed hopeless. The real victory was becoming someone I could be proud of. A year later, I graduated with honors. I received a job offer from a technology education nonprofit. We moved into a small apartment with hardwood floors and a view of the city. And when I sent out graduation announcements, I included a photo of myself standing in front of the auditorium wearing the same suit I wore on the day of the panel. There's no note or card, just the photo. My parents did not respond, but I knew they saw it, which was enough. I built my future from the ground up, with no safety nets, cheering sections, or shortcuts. And now, every time I walk into a boardroom or speak with a struggling student, I remember that experience, not as a scar, but as proof that I was never the disappointment. They couldn't see beyond their own expectations.